Juneteenth?
Mm-hmm. And then these are 4 items not on the agenda.
Okay, all of them, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, welcome everybody. We're back from closed session, and Mr. City Attorney, do you have any announcements out of closed session?
Thank you, Mayor. In closed session, the council, by a unanimous vote, has directed the city attorney to initiate an action. The action, the defendants, and the other particulars shall, once unsealed, be disclosed to any person upon inquiry, unless to do so would jeopardize the city's ability to effectuate service of process on one or more unserved parties, or that to do so would jeopardize its ability to conclude existing settlement negotiations to its advantage. That's the end of my report. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Our next item is, this is a ceremonial item. This is a 6 o'clock item, and first of all, we're going to do a Pledge of Allegiance, and then we have a moment of silence for all the major disasters we've had across the world, you know, with earthquakes and massacres and so forth, which is really, really horrible. We have a moment of silence. So at this time, I'd like to have our Mayor Pro Tem lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please place your hand over your heart. Join me in saluting the flag of our nation by saying, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Okay, our next item is a very, very important item.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
May I please, for the record, announce that Councilmember Basua joined the meeting today at 5:11 p.m. And also Housing Authority Commissioner Jose Andrade has joined the meeting at 6 p.m. today. Thank you.
Thank you. Let records share that. So we have a really important item here, and this is the Black History Month. And I have some people that like to share to come up to the podium. But I have Bruce Stewart that wants to talk about Juneteenth. You want to speak about that now, Bruce? Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I just want to thank the City of Oxnard from the Juneteenth Committee of Ventura County for all the support that you've given us through the years. It's a very successful program, and this year it will be held on June 17th at Plaza Park, and we look forward to seeing everybody there.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bruce. Okay, so I'm going to be calling, we have a proclamation for Black History Month. We're going to be calling, the proclamation is going to be the MLK Committee, Wesley Harris, Tracy Harris, Ryan Harris, and Mark Campos come up. And also we have Kimberly Kelly, the chapter president of Ventura County Alumni Chapter, Delta Sigma Thai Sorority Incorporated Far West Region. And also Angela Mitchell Landers, Juneteenth celebration of Ventura County. Regina Crawford, Ventura County, chapter of NAACP. The 20th Century Onyx Club, Community Advocacy Coalition, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, and AK Psi Kappa Lee Shen Clark. Coming up. Okay. Thank you, coming up, and I have some bris. Let me put this back here someplace so we can give you some room. Move the mic. Back in here. That way you can stand next to me. Thank you so much for being here today. This is a proclamation, Black History Month, February 2023. Whereas African Americans have a proud history and rich heritage, Black History Month gives Americans an opportunity to learn more about the contributions of African Americans in our community and our nation. Whereas we celebrate African Americans for their culture, political, economic, and historical contributions to our country. African Americans have persevered despite facing daunting challenges indignities as a result of widespread racial prejudice and institutional discrimination. Whereas African Americans are recognized by their courage, tenacity, contributions to our country, they have skilled workers, esteemed professionals, lawyers, pilots, inventors, educators, public officials, orators, publishers, physicians, athletes, small business owners, bankers, librarians, and much more to help create the status of wealth of the United States of America. Whereas in remembering the special role of our nation, most celebrated Americans, we also commend the everyday African American heroes who are dedicated to the long cherished ideals of family and community and the nation. Whereas the citizens are proud of their heritage and proud of their country and know the value of hard work and sacrifice in establishing a good life and a good home, a safe community, and also they deserve the honor and recognition from all of us. Now, therefore, I, John Zaragoza, the Mayor of the City of Oxnard, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2023 is Black History Month in Oxnard, and the City of Oxnard encourages all residents to learn more about the contributions made to the community in our nation by African Americans. And this is signed by the Mayor of the City of Oxnard. Who wants to speak first? This I have MIK committee first. There we go. And this is going to be yours.
Yes. Thank you so much on behalf of the Martin Luther King Committee and the Juneteenth Committee and the African Americans in this community. We want to say thank you, and it's an honor for my family and the MLK community to be up here to accept this. So thank you so very much, and I'm so happy to have the youth up here because we're going to be turning everything over to them as we come up and move along. So thank you again so much, Mayor. We appreciate you.
The future. Thank you. And I have another one before we have other council members are going to give others out. This is for Omega Psi fraternity. And I'm not going to read it again, but again, thank you so much for all the good work you do for Ventura County and also for our state and the country. You want to share anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On behalf of the Brothers of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Psi Xi chapter, we have been in the Ventura County area for 40-plus years. Our cardinal principles are manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift to make our community a better place. And so we thank you for acknowledging this month, and we thank you for all that you do for our city.
Thank you. Thank you for the good work. Thank you so much. And I have another one here. This is for AK Psi Kappa Omega. Clerk. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are a service organization to serve our community and our world, and also our youth, to bring our youth up. And we were founded at Howard University for Black women. So I want to thank you for all that the city has done and helped us in doing the work that we do for Xi Kappa Omega Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I have Mayor Pro Tem has another one behind Mr. Stewart here.
Thank you, man. I have a Community Action Coalition. Oh.
It's on.
And I have the proclamation for the Community Advocacy Coalition. Sure, my friend.
On behalf of the Community Advocacy Coalition, just want to say thank you, and thank you again to the City of Oxnard and to the Mayor for honoring us for Black History Month. Thank you.
And I've had the opportunity to work with Stewart for many, many events and also at the County of Ventura and potentially, hopefully, maybe the Planning Commission. Here we go.
Thank you. And it's good to see Stuart up here. Take care. This is for an award, similar award for Kimberly Kelly, Chapter President, Ventura County Alumni Chapter, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Far West Region. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mayor Zaragoza, and to all the dignitaries in the room. I really appreciate the City of Oxnard honoring Black History Month, and I just want to remind us that history is the operative word in Black History Month. We talk about, maintaining, a society that is worth living in for our young people. But we need to make sure that we are maintaining history in our schools. We need to teach that, the accurate history for our young people and for the rest of our society, just to make it better for us all. So thank you again so much for this proclamation.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. We have another proclamation over here from Councilman Basua.
This proclamation goes to the 20th Century Onyx Club.
There we go.
I would like to thank you, Mayor, for giving us this proclamation on behalf of the 20th Century Onyx Club. As you know, we've been in existence since 1965, and we will be having our debutante ball on the 25th of this month to commemorate the Black History Month. And again, thank you on behalf of the 20th Century Onyx Club.
Thank you so much. And we have another one here from our Councilman Oscar Badrikal.
Thank you. This proclamation is for Regina Crawford, part of the Ventura County chapter of the NAACP.
Okay. No Regina? What happened to Regina?
I'm sorry. Regina, I'm sorry, has
okay.
double booked herself, and so I got thrown in there. Thank you so much. It's an honor for me to be here in representation of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, one of our largest civil rights organizations. We want to say thank you. We're honored to take this, and we're honored that you are proclaiming for Black History Month. Our goal and our mission, as you know, is for us to be sure that everyone gets a part, plays a part of enjoying what America is supposedly stands for, and that we become one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's your goal. Thank you. Thank you.
And say hello to Regina for us. Thank you. And we have one more, Sharon.
I have a proclamation here for Angela Mitchell-Landers from the Juneteenth celebration of Ventura County.
I've already talked to you a little bit about what Juneteenth is about. Just a little bit for history, though. 4 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed into law, the slaves in Texas were notified in Galveston, Texas, and it's been a celebration ever since, and it's now become a national holiday. And again, as I said before, we look forward to seeing you all on June 17th for another celebration.
Thank you so much. And I remember when they started over at the PAC, there was about four or five people at the time. Now it's a big, big event. Thank all of you for being here today. And whoops. You hear me? It's really an honor on behalf of the City Council, to have you all here today. And congratulations, and very, very important month. Thank you so much. Thank you. You can go this way. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay. It died in the middle of nothing. Thank you so much. Our next item is items not on the agenda. And we have Ronald Araujo. Ronald, and let me see. Ronald, go ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ronald Arwejo, and I'm the chair of the East Village neighborhood. I'm also a member of the District 6 Candidates Forum Planning Committee under the Inter-Neighborhood Council Organization, INCO, along with Len Schulman, John Hike, and Amanda Muir, the chairs of Carriage Square, Bryce Canyon North, and Wagon Wheel. The District 6 Councilmember Candidates Forum will be held this upcoming Thursday, February 9, at 7 p.m. at the South Oxnard Center, which is within a 5-minute drive or 30-minute walk from most of District 6. As has been done over the past 3 weeks via social media and flyering, we invite you and all invested people to attend this forum in person, online, or via call-in. Spanish translation will be provided through Zoom. We greatly appreciate the many organizations, neighborhoods, people, and staff, especially Mr. Adam Smith, who have so far helped publicize this important event, and we hope that you all can spread the word in your capacities as elected officials. We thank you for your support of the INCO and this event, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Lang Martinez.
My name's Lang Martinez. I'm a homeless advocate in Ventura County. Recently, there was an article that was written that I wrote that went to the VC Reporter, from the VC Reporter, went to LA Times. Each one of you on the council and other council members throughout Ventura County were sent that article and asked to respond or give a comment. I would assume by not doing so that you would agree with the article. You know, it's funny that when I first put the article out, the first phone call I actually received was from an officer from Oxnard PD. And then I met with another officer from Oxnard PD. And we talked about the article, and they actually told me, thank you for finally writing something that was true in our city, not just our city, but in Ventura County as a whole. You know, we have a situation here and a crisis with the homeless. Things have not gotten better. They've gotten worse. You know, when you think when I come in here, I come here by myself. I don't. I choose to come here by myself. Yes, I have management. I have a literary agent. And to me, it's blah, blah, blah. I come by myself and I speak for myself as an advocate, bringing up these things that are going on. I've met with many mansions. I've met with Harbor. I met with hotel owners, knowing that discussions are being discussed to continue Project Room Key. Project Room Key was a failure in LA. Ventura County is the only one that's held on to it. You know, I was sitting down with a bunch of individuals and I was going through cost, and actually with $102.50 voucher per day, food, services, and let's not talk about the 911 calls that are called to our law enforcement. And if it wasn't for law enforcement, I wouldn't be here today. You know, whether or not there are some people in OPDs that don't like me, I owe my life to Oxnard Police Department. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here today. I very much respect the police department here. You can ask me other areas, no comment, like you, no comment. So we have a crisis here. You know, there was an agenda talking about, you know, we talked about Halico and 44 members. There's more than 44 individuals on Perkins Street, and we've been discussing doing another situation of taking them out of that area, that encampment. Jessica mentioned there was 25. There's not 25. I went out there personally with other individuals and I took pictures. You and I, Mayor, had a discussion the other day. It was actually the first time that we talked, and I thank you. You know, there was no bad words, no disrespect. I asked you about an email that Peggy Ayala Rivera sent you, and sent it to Emilio and to Jessica in regards to the photographs and what are we thinking. You mentioned you didn't receive that. I'm gonna resend that to all of you, and I'd ask for like a comment. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Diane Valley. Diane.
Good evening, Mayor,
Good evening.
council members, and city staff. My name is Diana Velzy. I'm chair of INCO. I'm here to provide some information to the neighborhood or our residents of Oxnard. about our resuming the bulky item drop-offs. The next upcoming drop-off days is March 4th. Seaview Estates will be held at Seaview Park. Oxnard Shores, Oxnard Dunes, and Hollywood by the Sea is also on March 4th and the area is to be determined. March 18th is Via Marina, will be held at Via Marina Park, and also on March 18th, Wilson, that area will also be determined. April 1st, College Estates, College Park, Terrace Estates, Tierra Vista, and Via Capri and Mar Vista will be held at College Estates. Carriage Square, East Park, will be held at East Park, and that is also on April 1st. And then we'll have our first, for this particular year, Del Norte drop-off event on April 8th, and that, of course, is held at the Del Norte site. Also, just to give you an update, last year between August 6th and November 19th, we had approximately 13 events, and we were able to collect a little over 198 tons of solid waste, e-waste, and green waste. And that's our status for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rena. Rena. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm here to support my son, but I thought I'd just bring this to your attention as well because I didn't know where to start. But I live at the 700 block of Marbella Court in Oxnard, and there's a breezeway there that has multiple lights that have been out for about a year now. There's also one that's completely broken and has a cone on it that has also been there for about a year. And I'd just like to see if we can get that fixed and help the neighborhood look nice again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you please repeat the address?
It's the 700 block of Marbella Court.
Thank you.
Marbella. Thank you. Our next speaker is Luciano Morales. Luciano.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. Good evening. It's an honor to be here to talk today about the exciting opportunity that GoGo offers to Oxnard residents and visitors. My name is Luciano, and I am the CEO of GoGo, Ventura County's first micromobility company, and I've also lived in Oxnard my whole life. GoGo is a new micromobility solution that offers convenient and environmentally friendly mode of transportation for short trips. We understand that the introduction of new technology in cities can be unsettling at times, but we are confident that GoGo will be a valuable asset to the community. This is why we propose starting with a small number of scooters in the beginning and piloting GoGo in small, select areas of Oxnard. This allows us to collect data and feedback from the community while also demonstrating the service's benefits. This will also allow us to address any concerns that you, the City Council, may have regarding safety, traffic flow, and maintenance costs. GoGo will establish strong partnerships with local organizations and businesses in addition to the pilot program to demonstrate its commitment to the community. We believe that by working together, we can make a positive difference and improve everyone's quality of life. GoGo will also conduct educational and outreach programs to raise awareness about the benefits of micromobility and promote safe and responsible use. Our goal is for everyone to understand how to use the scooters properly and how they can benefit from this new mode of transportation. Finally, we are committed to being open and transparent with the City Council about the data gathered from the pilot program and the steps we are taking to ensure the safety and well-being of users and the community as a whole. To summarize, I believe that GoGo has the potential to be a valuable asset in the community, providing convenient and sustainable modes of transportation, while also improving everyone's quality of life. Soon, GoGo will be able to demonstrate its value to the community and persuade you, the City Council, that is the best micromobility option for Oxnard by taking these steps and demonstrating that we have a commitment to responsible growth. Thank you for your time and consideration. You guys have a good day.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any additional speakers either virtually or in the audience?
Mayor Zaragoza, we do not have any additional speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you so much. Our next item is item G. This is a report of the city manager. And do we have any speakers on that item?
Mayor Zaragoza, we do not have any speakers for this item, either virtually or in person.
Okay, Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have two brief updates for the community, and then we have what we believe will be our final routine approval for the AB 361 remote teleconferencing meeting authorization. So if I can have Diego put up the updates. Okay, so first we have the opportunities for our residents to receive utility bill assistance support. And we've been putting this information out, so I'm just announcing it one more time. This information is available at the city's website as well as that of Community Action Ventura County. They are partnering with us to reach more needy residents with regard to utility bill assistance. So there is another set of office hours available on February 13th as well as February 27th, both from 8:30 a.m. to noon. That'll take place here in the city facilities at 214 South, is that correct?
South C Street.
South C Street, yes. I need to get new glasses again. And then if you have any questions, you can please call Community Action of Ventura County at 805-436-4000. And then next is a reminder that this Saturday morning, we have our formal water rates workshop, which is a meeting of the City Council here in Council Chambers this Saturday, February 11. And it's scheduled to begin at 10 a.m. and may go through to noon or perhaps even longer. We will see. So that's it for quick updates. And now I'm going to hand it over to the City Attorney for the AB 361 reauthorization.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. So as the City Manager indicated, this is probably the last time we will have to go through this exercise because the state governor is slated to lift the COVID state of emergency on February 28th. So the recommendation is that the City Council reauthorize remote teleconference meetings of the legislative bodies of the City of Oxnard in accordance with Assembly Bill 361 based on the following findings. 1, the current COVID-19 situation, particularly with its variants, is causing and will continue to cause imminent risks to the health and safety of persons within the city, including city council members, city staff, appointed officials, and members of the public. 2, state and local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing. And 3, the governor's COVID-19 state of emergency is still in effect. And 4, numerous public agencies throughout Ventura County are still operating in accordance with Assembly Bill 361 for the reasons stated herein.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. No, so we need to vote for that. Go ahead, question? Yeah.
Yes, Mr. City Manager, under your City Manager's report, there are concerns that have been raised to me about fires in areas of the city adjacent to 5th Street Harbor by various neighborhoods. The Dunes, Oxnard Shores, Mandalay, Seaview, Seabridge. And I know that recently I've seen police activity along with social service. Can we get an update about that? And I know I've given some information, been given information, but I think it's worthwhile for the residents to hear.
Yes, and thanks for the opportunity, Council Member, for us to provide an update, because I know we have our police here, and actually it's the police chief, Chief Benitez.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jason Benitez, the Police Chief. In brief, I can tell you that we are aware that we have several encampments in that particular area. Right now, we've estimated there's about 3 dozen encampments in that little area that we were speaking of today, most of which is actually on private property. And so the matter at hand right now is we are attempting to, well, there's actually litigation involving property ownership, so that puts in question who we hold responsible for maintaining or allowing those encampments to remain on the property. So once that's done, we are able to do more things like abatements. But in short, The police activity that has been seen out there lately is weekly outreach with Salvation Army and backpack medicine. So the purpose of that is for the officers to go out and try to attempt to offer services to the persons that are at the encampments with the hopes that they'll choose an alternate path. So eventually at some point there will be additional abatements scheduled, but that is still yet to be determined.
Thank you for that information. So my understanding is there's ongoing litigation to determine the true ownership, so we can find out who we hold responsible. So I hope that the residents that are complaining a lot are listening. And also, there was some issue about an abatement. There may be some requirements from some state agency to be involved?
Correct. In addition to the private property issue, once we're past that, if any heavy equipment is to set foot into the area where these encampments are talking about, it has to actually be approved by the Coastal Commission. And so that does take time.
It's another hurdle. Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate the city manager and city police
Chief, can I have a quick question?
Thank
Is
you.
that city, in the city area or county?
Actually, the mixture, there's a variety in there. So there's several parcels in there that have a number of different owners. Most of the encampments are actually on private property.
Private property.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Are they in city or county?
Okay.
City.
City. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the COVID-19 update by the city attorney, so, no? Oh, I'm sorry, we need a motion. So, okay, moved by Councilman Perrello, second by Councilman Teran. Please vote. Teran is second. It's not working. It's not working.
Thank you. Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next item is item H, and this is a city council, and any items that you'd like to briefly share with us, and also any items that you'd like to place on the agenda for the future. 3 minutes, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Mayor.
I would
Pro Tem.
just like to take a moment and publicly thank Councilwoman Basua for having a birthday today and being here, so.
Happy
I don't know
birthday.
if we should all sing to her or not. Should we? Sure.
Okay.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you. And many
Thank
more.
you. Thank you, everybody.
Councilman Perrello?
In line, again, happy birthday. And to Gabby's family that's eagerly waiting for her to come home and celebrate. And it's a big deal. We understand one of her children, same birthday. Congratulations to your child. But I want her family to know she takes her job seriously, and we're going to plow through this agenda, and she will be home to help celebrate. Thank you. And the only business that I would have, I hope that very shortly we can have the Planning Commission names listed so that the Planning Commissions can vote electronically the same as we do on the council. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem, any additional comments? No, sir. Okay, Basua?
I don't have no comments. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Oscar?
No comment at this time.
Councilman Teran?
I have comments. I'll keep them very brief. Thank you.
You promised, no, I'm just kidding.
I want to let the public know that in District 2, we have a couple neighborhood council meetings coming up in the next couple weeks. We have one this Thursday at Sierra Linda neighborhood, 7 p.m. Thursday, February 9th at Sierra Linda School. Then week after next, Wagon Wheel on February 22nd at 6 p.m. at the Town Square Conference Room. February 23rd, the River Park Neighborhood Council will be meeting at 6 p.m. at Rio Vista Middle School. And the same evening, South Bank will be meeting February 23rd at 6:30 at Rio del Norte School. And then lastly, I do want to thank the Chicano Studies Research Center from UCLA and our city staff, especially our city manager, for commissioning them on the launch of a comprehensive study that will be happening in the city of Oxnard. I attended that yesterday in addition to the mayor and Councilwoman Basua, and I just was very impressed with the work that we're going to be seeing, and we'll be doing some really good data gathering, or see them doing some data gathering to present to the public in the near future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'd also like to thank, Alex again, as you mentioned, in UCLA and Oxnard College, UCLA Chicano Studies, for that outstanding session that they had over at Oxnard College. And I think that's going to bear a lot of good fruit, for us. And I would thank our city manager for being the leader on that. Thank you so much. And one last item too, and I'll be done. I just also want to thank Alex again, Nguyen, our Mayor Pro Tem, Jack Villa, and Roger Portier for the town hall meeting we had for District 4 the other day over at the PAC at the Ventura Room. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. It was well attended, and we had quite a few people there too. So that was really great. So thank you so much. Mr. City Manager, want to share anything on UCLA?
Not tonight. I don't want to interfere with the birthday party.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, our next item is, this is the review of the information consent items. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers on this item, virtually or in the audience?
Mayor Zaragoza, we do not have any speakers virtually or in person for these items.
Thank you. And also, we're going to pull item number 3, the housing, So, council members, any questions, items? Do we need a motion on this item? Okay, go ahead. What number? Number 2, go ahead. Bert.
Thank you, Mayor. There's been a lot of discussion. It's hot and heavy on the internet, on the social media platforms, which enough said. My reason for asking the question on this item is I understand that the amount of money is a lot of money. The amount of money is a lot of money. There are homes going for less and homes going for more than this. But nothing that was purchased 20 years ago is less expensive today. And recently, having had an individual that had to take an emergency hospital trip and the involvement of, just regular patching them up, 200 grand gets dropped extremely quick. There are people that are complaining that in this day and age, we are militarizing the police department, and I respect those people with their views. I want to give the police department an opportunity to explain what this vehicle is. This is, in my opinion, this is not an armored tank that's going to go into someplace and destroy something. This is something to support the men and women of the police department and the residents in the city of Oxnard and potentially others, depending on what type of natural disaster we had. And I'm sure people have looked at the news and they've seen the natural disasters that can happen. This is a significant item, and I really hope that the police department is given a fair shake. They're not looking for high times and good times. They're not looking for fun and games. They're looking to serve and protect. And the meaning of a peace officer is to keep the peace. But ladies and gentlemen, when something goes wrong, I don't see citizens run up to these situations. And I will give one that I've been warned was not a common thing to say. We recently had a citizen in broad daylight at a public event, a sporting event, at a local high school, beaten to death, and no residents jumped up to stop the people that did it and hold them for the police. We need the public to help the police department. This is something that I believe we need for the city. Go ahead. Thank you.
Officer.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. I'm Tim Kelly. I'm the Special Operations Commander for the department. Yes, it is a lot of money. It's something that the department is in need of. This is not new to us. We have an existing command post. Unfortunately, it's over 20 years old. And just because of its age, evolving technologies, unfortunately, it's not able to fulfill the missions that we need it to meet. One of the biggest requisites we had is we need something that can be a fully functional communications center in the event that we have a catastrophic communications failure at our department. And to be honest, we just don't have that capability right now. Cost was a factor. We looked at several different options. We looked at smaller vehicles like the the Mercedes-Benz transit vans are very popular now. But unfortunately, again, for it to be a fully functional communication center, that requires a minimum of 3 dispatchers to be able to work out of that. And the transit vans just, because of its size, that option is off the table. The other thing that we really needed was a restroom. This is going to be used for larger incidents, prolonged, protracted incidents, where we're going to have a lot of officers that are going to be on scene, a lot of resources. And, it's one of those things we don't often think about, but having a restroom available to the officers is a big benefit to us. As far as military equipment goes, yes, technically under the California Government Code, it is considered military equipment. With that said, to be quite frank, this is basically a 35-foot motorhome. This is something that it's not built for the military. It's specific built for law enforcement to be a mobile command vehicle. It will have radios. It'll have computers that give us the ability to use our databases, our computer-aided dispatch system, a conference area. And this is not just something that the police department is going to utilize. I mean, this is something that, depending on the size and scope of what we're dealing with, say, for instance, a natural disaster, if we have to work in unified command, this is something that can accommodate a lot of different agencies that would have to be involved. So, yes, military equipment, and I understand there's a lot of concern with militarization of the police department, but this is not a tank. This is not an armored vehicle. This is not something that's going to have weapons. This is something that is going to be utilized for large-scale incidents, major disasters, crime scenes, homicides, that type of thing. And it just gives us the ability to better coordinate our resources. The other thing is, in addition to being a backup communication center, this is something that will be utilized, when we do our community engagement events. It's something that we can have the community come in, look at. There's conference area in the back if we wanted to have community meetings. So I understand it is a lot of money. We did look at a lot of different vendors. In fact, one of the larger manufacturers, I received a proposal from, and pretty much had them spec out the exact vehicle that we're looking at purchasing. And the price that they quoted me at was $919,000. So over $200,000 more than this vendor.
Thank you. I hope that some people, you can lead, they got a saying, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. I hope that some people that have got real concerns have listened and they understand. Because I grew up in a time when people would go to Radio Shack and put together a radio. The communications now in this world is not that way. And it gets more and more needing to be protected, and that means more and more expense for newer stuff. And nothing's cheap. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. One thing too, that unit could be used in case of a potential earthquake.
Yes, exactly.
They say you can't get into the police department, the buildings, you can't get in, you can definitely use that unit for that.
Yes, and to give you a real world example when we probably would have utilized this is the recent rain events, that we probably would have had that out acting, being a incident command post for some of the areas.
Thank you.
One question I have, God forbid there's an earthquake, but we're all waiting for the big one, unfortunately. Will this machine be in a facility that will not have a lot of stories above it so that it can be protected? If the building came down, it's not going to come on top of this. There could be simply a shed to protect it out of the weather. What's the plan?
Yes, I mean, we have a location where, it's essentially a warehouse where we do need to park it indoors just to keep it from obviously being out in the sun and weather. That certainly speeds up the process of deterioration. So, but it's secure and God willing, that building will never fall down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Turan.
Thank you. Councilmember Perillo addressed many of the questions that I had for this item also, so thank you for bringing those up, or bringing the responses, Commander. One last thing in regards to this being a kind of a command post, a mobile command post, we're looking at it, and rather than being kind of a tactical function, it sounds like it's more of an operational administrative function that it would serve. And the thing that stands out most to me, as the mayor and Councilor Perillo mentioned, is around communications. And certainly we've seen elsewhere in the world, in Turkey, 7.8 earthquake that happened with aftershocks that have been bigger than any earthquake we've had here in recent memory. And if and when something like that happens, we need to be prepared. Our public safety cannot go without communications. And that's one end of the spectrum. Another end of the spectrum could be the redundancies we have in place for communications should there be a power outage, or should there be something that happens at PD that takes out communications for a few hours. We still need to have this and other contingencies in place. So can you give us an example of a recent event that required us to activate some of our contingencies for communication, especially dispatch?
Of course. In fact, tonight, the chief reminded me, of course, he knew the date. In 2014, we had a power outage, and we were actually forced to have our dispatchers in the back parking lot working out of patrol cars. Now, we do have contingencies in place if that is something that's going to be not something we can remedy pretty quickly. We have contingencies where we will have dispatchers go to the county dispatch center. Problem is that it takes a while to get them over there. So in the interim, and I mean, obviously, depending on the scope of the event, I mean, the county could also be impacted. So yeah, that's a big thing, is we don't, as of now, we don't really have that stopgap, that emergency communications center. And again, 2014, thankfully, didn't last too long. How many? About 4 hours. But,
Thank you.
trying to have our dispatchers working out in the parking lot in patrol cars is not, we're definitely not providing the level of service that we need to be providing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Those are my questions.
Thank you, Commander. Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move the recommended action except for number 3, which we've taken off the agenda.
Okay, we have a second. Second by Councilman Madrigal. First by Perillo, second by Madrigal. Please vote.
Excuse me, Mayor, I'd like to verify the items that council are voting on for consent items. Can you please confirm that the vote is for consent items 1, 2, and 5?
1, 2, 4, and 5.
Okay, so we're including the vote for the Housing Authority item K4?
Yes.
Okay,
And item 3 was rescheduled.
correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please vote.
Okay.
Commissioner Andrade, may I please have your vote? Thank you. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I say something?
Councilor Perillo.
I forgot under my councilman's comments. I see the chair of the INCO still sitting here. I want to thank the INCO for coming and giving us an update. I also want to thank the INCO for having a candidate forum for District 6. It's an error on my part for forgetting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is, this is reports. This is the city treasurer. Subject, the city treasurer's monthly investment report for the period ending December 31, 2022. And the recommendation of the city council receive and file this report. And this is pre-recorded per Measure M. And Mr. Treasurer, Mr. Phil Molina. Any questions of the treasurer, council members? Okay, Councilor Turan.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Molina, for the presentation. We saw this at Finance and Governance, and I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to summarize each of the slides that were there. I see our Deputy City Manager is shaking her head. My apologies if I'm mixing up with what you brought to us. This is your quarterly treasurer's report, right?
It is the quarterly and the calendar annual financial report.
Okay, my
Not
apologies on
financial
that.
investment.
Regardless, thank you
You're
for the
fine.
presentation.
Okay, council members, any other questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
if I may, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Councilman Perrella?
I appreciate the report. I want to thank the treasurer and the assistant city treasurer I see in the audience and all involved. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr.
If I-
Molina?
Yeah, I'd like to take an opportunity to again summarize it because many of the people probably have not had a chance to look at the recording. I would like to at least identify that as of December 31st, 2022, the par value of our investments was $398,310,000. That's a substantial amount for a city our size. I also want to identify that the cash in the general Bank of America bank accounts as of that date was $25,197,551.59. I'd like to also identify that the estimated annual interest earnings was $6,871,428. And after this report was prepared, I got information that LAIF had increased their investment yield from, I think it was initially 1.77 to 2.07. So actually, this would be a conservative estimate on the amount of earnings we received. And finally, I want to identify that, as you know, because we want to minimize risk while maximizing earning, the only way to generate more money is to put as much of our cash into investments as possible. And as of, again, December 31st, we had invested 95% of our available cash. And I appreciate that. If you have any other questions, please let me know.
Thank you so much. Mr. Councilman Perrella?
Yes, I do have a question. Subscribing to newspapers, continually they're having ads in the various newspapers for financial instruments. You'll increase your rate, you can bump up this, you can bump up that. With the amounts of money that we have, are the banks reaching out to you to, especially to cash on short term, to get a higher rate for going another month, 2 months? Are
Yes.
they reaching out to you? What's the status of that?
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I've had a number of conversations, including this morning, one of our brokers called and asked if he could reschedule and restructure our investment portfolio. And that would mean we look at those that are below 2.07% and decide on selling those so that we can reinvest it again at 4 or 5.5%. To do so, of course, would incur a loss, because if I have an investment that's offering 1% and I'm trying to sell in a market that's offering 5%, I'm not going to get 100% of that. So they'll offer me maybe 90, maybe 80%. So up front, we can have a substantial loss, but over a 4 or 5 year period, it may be a net gain. The only problem with that, and I enjoy listening to the brokers, is they always like to make an assumption that once the decision has been made consistent with what the recommendation is, nothing else is going to happen and we're going to be able to enjoy that to the end. But that's not the case, because once you restructure your portfolio, if 2 or 3 months or a year or two down the line, the market goes in the opposite direction, you're going to have all those agencies call back their 5% instruments and want to reissue them at 1 or 2%. So, we're always being sold, as I try to send each one of you an indication of some of the brokers that I receive. Each morning I get up, including Friday or off Fridays, to receive all the brokers submitting their recommendations to me. And I would like to activate the investment committee. If I could have a couple of council members volunteer to participate, then we could go through that on a monthly basis and see maybe there would be grounds for restructuring our investment portfolio. I'd like to hear. I hope that answers your question.
I appreciate that answer, but what I was specifically asking about is cash. As we have listed here, your report, well done, $25 million in cash. Does the Bank of America come back and say, look, you got $25 million with me. If you hold it for another 2 weeks, I'll give you 1/8% more?
That's a good question. After we looked at, because we're just finishing the current RFP for banking services, which we plan to bring back to you, I think, in the next council meeting. After we negotiate for costs, then I work with the recommended bank, and I want them to provide me an amount of earned income interest that would cover those costs. And at the last meeting we had with the Bank of America, for example, they offered me, I think it's 2% earnings on any cash balance we have in the bank. So what I have to do then is balance, okay, how much are we going to be charged this month? And how much of that am I going to cover if I keep a minimum amount of cash in the bank? And if I can keep enough cash in the bank so that it covers my cost, then at least I'm breaking even. So we're into that kind of but it's an excellent question, but we're always trying to make sure we minimize our costs. The other issue is the bank says, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 2% today, but that doesn't guarantee what I'm going to give you next month. So again, each month we have to look at what is the interest they're giving us on our credit, and there may be a time when we want to say, you know what, if I can get 6 or 7 or 8%, I might want to pay off that $36,000 monthly bill to make up the difference, and we bring the cash down to, I estimate, about $3 million on a daily basis, if that helps you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Tron?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Molina, for restating the figures that were mentioned in your presentation. Because of Measure M and it prohibits the public from seeing any of the presentation tonight live, you reenacting it and adding those figures for folks to have that context, even if they don't have a visual context, is helpful. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Molina, the county has under Judge Hintz, they have an investment committee. Shouldn't we belong to that? Because I know the school districts and other special districts, they all belong to that investment committee, so.
You know, I think Judge Hintz is retired.
I understand, but no.
I spoke to the recent county treasurer, and I've held my hand up and say, hey, Oxnard has a substantial amount of money.
That's right.
Right now, I think we have $31 million with them. And I said, I think that means we deserve a seat in your committee. And thank you for reminding me. I'll get back in touch with her tomorrow.
That's right.
Remind her that, hey, we want a seat on that committee.
And it's an excellent committee because everybody belongs to the school districts, special districts, and the county, and everybody has any investments with the county. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, our next item is, any speakers on this item, ma'am?
Mayor Zaragoza, we do not have, oh, actually, we have one person that just raised his hand.
Okay.
Brian Rodriguez.
Okay. Brian?
Brian Rodriguez, please press *6 to unmute, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, just to confirm, this is the item on council priorities and the
No.
the American Rescue Plan funding?
No, this is city treasurer's report. So you want to speak
Oh
on
no,
the other?
I'm sorry. I'll speak for that item.
Okay, thank you. Any additional speakers, or potential speakers?
Mayor Zaragoza, we do not have any speakers virtually or in person.
Thank you. Our next item is the city manager department subject, conduct an oral discussion regarding shifting gears, make adjustments and align with the economic and social circumstances, and to make decisions to modify the American Rescue Plan Act, ARP-A projects, council priorities, and the outlook on the city restoration budgets. This is a recommendation that the city council conduct a robust oral discussion and deliberation on the following items. 1, the need for the city to shift gears to make adjustments to align with economic and social circumstances, modify the ARPA projects. 3, modify the timelines of the city council priorities from 5 to 7 years. And 4, extend the restoration budgets from 3 to 5 years. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and perhaps we can take the public speaker while Diego in the
Okay.
back pulls up my cue cards. Thank you.
Brian Rodriguez, please press *6 to unmute, and you have 3 minutes.
Hello, City Council and City staff. My name is Brian Rodriguez. I'm a resident of the City of Oxnard, and I just kind of wanted to comment on this issue and kind of advocate for the category of improving the quality of life for the residents of the City of Oxnard. I think, recent meetings regarding, sports park and the aquatic center kind of highlight the need for this category to be more prioritized. I think that, improving the park situation, the maintenance, and, adding more amenities, and also just overall improving the bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure is really important. For the infrastructure and natural resources, the number one, I hope that you could find a way to kind of wordsmith that and include, bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. And then on the number two on that category, I think we've done a tremendous job of restoring proper maintenance to the parkways and medians and tree trimming cycle, and also cleaning up the gateways to the city. And so possibly, being done with that goal and changing it to restore proper maintenance of our parks and recreational facilities. I think that, it's really important that as this council moves forward to direct staff in kind of, considering these items for the residents of the city. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Any other speakers, Madam Clerk?
Mayor Zaragoza, there's no additional speakers.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the purpose of tonight's live and oral discussion is essentially to have a collective check-in about the realities here in the city, in the region, the state, the country, and the world, so that we have realistic expectations about what we can and cannot achieve with regard to timelines. Ironically, this is a scenario where not having enough money isn't our primary obstacle, which is an interesting and quite new problem for the city of Oxnard to have. So I want to begin, though, by sharing some highlights about all the work that we have been doing recently and that we are doing. Because what we're suggesting tonight is not that we need to come to a screeching halt, just that we have to make some major adjustments and modifications, but we will continue our work. So very quickly, you can see here, this is for the prior 18 months that we started collecting this data, and you can see all of the illegal dumping that our city crews have picked up. So the good news is also the bad news. The good news is you can see we've done a lot. We've responded to over 13,000 reports of illegal dumping. We've picked up over 2,000 tons of trash, nearly 1,000 refrigerators, and 6,223 mattresses. So that's good news, but at the same time, it's bad news. It's bad news that we even have to do this. And I'm pretty certain that most of this comes from our own residents. And we've also diverted our staff's efforts to help with homeless encampment cleanups, 766 of them over the last 18 months. That's a lot of work, and kudos to our staff that do this work day in and day out. We've also conducted a handful of bulky item drop-off days, and over the last 12 months, we've had 4 regional neighborhood events, 13 neighborhood events, and 4 citywide events at the Del Norte facility. Overall, we've had participation of over 6,000 residents and collected over 2,000 tons of garbage. Now, the good news about this work is this is not illegal dumping, this is legal. So again, a lot of great work by our city's staff. Next, graffiti. Here also the good news is the bad news. Last year, over 33,000 graffiti removals. It's a lot of work. Okay, this slide's a little busy, but essentially what this is demonstrating is the amount of work that we could not do in terms of our parks and median maintenance. The categories are mowing in the parks, pruning trees, trash can servicing, restroom cleaning, gopher patrol, repair of irrigation, as well as litter abatement at our parks and weed abatement. And in essence, prior to Measure E, the city did not have any resources and could not perform most of this required maintenance. And as you can see on the far right with Measure E, we're able now to perform a lot of this work, and that continues as we go forward. This is a busy slide, but this is a summary of the streets and alley repair work that has been, that's in progress, that's been completed, and that is soon to be performed. There are over 23 projects here that represent 23 different areas of the city. Again, a lot of work has been happening this past year, and we will continue as much of it as we can. With regard to police, we've made progress there in terms of hiring, even though that is becoming more and more difficult. Emergency Communications Center, staffing up there to fill vacancies, our neighborhood policing team, and our beat coordinators. We have now 11 police beats as assigned, and each assigned a coordinator, which is up from 7 officers back in 2019. Our false alarm response mitigation efforts have made a tremendous improvement. The false alarm responses were reduced by 60% since 2017. And on the more serious and hardcore side, drug enforcement unit this past year's investigated over 20 prominent narcotics dealers, written 76 search warrants, investigated 2 human trafficking cases, which involved multiple arrests. And they've also collaborated with the Ventura FBI office to investigate 6 narcotics trafficking and money laundering cases. In 2021, that unit seized over $1 million, it's parentheses street value, I don't know exactly what that means, it's a good thing, of methamphetamine and over $900,000 worth of fentanyl, as well as 39 firearms. So sometimes we hear the complaint that someone's is sitting at a stop sign, and they notice someone else running a stop sign, and a police car is going by and doesn't stop them. Most of the time, it's because they're busy doing a lot of work that is much more urgent and serious. Fire department. So for the first time, they've actually started organizing the city into 2 battalions, working to maintain adequate staffing. The chief has been working hard about improving the culture of the department. They have sought and received grants for increasing the advanced life support capabilities known as ALS. We are working to replace and to modernize safety equipment that our personnel need. In terms of responses, you can see there over 20,000 calls for service, which is an increase of 1,226 from the year before. We had over 30,000 unit responses to all types of calls, 774 fires in 2022. Of those, 218 were structural fires, as well as well over 13,000 medical incidents. So as you can see, they are extremely busy. Community development, where we are struggling with staffing, but we're slowly making progress there. So staffing up slowly over on the engineering side, as well as with city planners. We get quite a number of complaints about how slow the plan checks are, but in the last 6 months, they've worked really hard, and they've actually reduced the backlog by 50%. So continue to make a lot of progress there. In terms of long-range planning, last year, we received the state certification for our state-mandated housing element. The council approved the expanded polystyrene ordinance. Shorthand, I think it's safe to say styrofoam. And you also updated the safety element of the general plan, as well as you approved the city's, I believe it's the city's first climate action and adaptation plan. So also a lot of work on the policy side by the city council. And then a lot of people have interest in cannabis, not me personally, but we're making progress with 2 retail stores that opened last year. I have no idea who they are or where they are. 7 cannabis businesses are actually under construction. Same, I don't know where they are or who they are. 6 are currently in plan check, and 1 is pending plan check submittal. So again, very, very busy in our community development department. And kudos to all the staff there who I can't say enough about the amount of effort that they put in, given how short-staffed they are. On our housing department and our housing authority side, lots of activity there. Here's a list of the affordable housing projects that are approved, under construction, and expected to begin construction in 2023. You can see there's a long list there. Very busy as well. We expect 494 affordable housing units will be constructed over the next 2 years. In addition, on the economic development and housing department side, of course, the council enacted the rent stabilization and tenant protection program last year, which we've implemented and are slowly getting that out the gate. The first action the council took with regard to the American Rescue Plan Act was to issue gratitude paychecks to frontline essential workers in the grocery industry. So we were, it was a struggle, but we were able to get $1.58 million out the door to those essential workers. We also performed a lot of work in terms of helping our residents with rent relief. We assisted over 3,000 Oxnard tenants to apply for and to be approved for the California Rent Relief Program. The state paid just over $29 million in back rent on behalf of Oxnard tenants. And utility payment relief, the rent relief program, also we worked with our residents and the state, and we were able to get over $900,000 past due utility payments paid by the state for our residents. On the homelessness side, some statistics from 2021 through 2022. We have permanently housed 132 individuals. We've served 212 unduplicated individuals at the Navigation Center. 74 people have entered the encampment response program. We cleared the Halico site again. I know the city's done that before, including on occasion before I arrived here. The street outreach program averages 147 engagements with homeless persons each month. And the shelter / permanent supportive housing facility here downtown broke ground. The organization that is constructing the facility, they chose to name it the Casa de Carmen and the Oxnard Navigation Center. So that broke ground last August. And when you drive by there, you can see the construction occurring. In terms of culture and community services, again, the pandemic really just waylaid a lot of our efforts, but we were able to launch the Oxnard Arts Academy first in the Colonia neighborhood. That classroom has been open in full operation. I believe they've already had one recital not too long ago, and we're hoping, we're still searching for the adequate facility, but we're hoping to launch in South Oxnard as well later this year. And our recreation facilities for youth and seniors all reopened in the aftermath of the pandemic. So you can see those listed there, the Colonia, South Winds, and South Oxnard Youth Centers, all of our senior centers, Wilson, Palm Vista, Colonia, and South Oxnard. the basketball gym, our limited capacity for our youth sports programs, and of course, our library and branch all reopened full-time. So that's just a quick highlight of all the work we have been doing, that we've been not only succeeding at, but slowly improving and getting better at. And those are just the highlights. Obviously, I hope everyone is well aware that all of our internal departments are also crucial in supporting all of the outward-facing departments that we have. So next, I want to get into these primary issues that force us to confront the reality of how things need to, how we need to be realistic about how things have become, and will continue to be quite slow. So we're going to discuss supply chain disruption, inflation, and labor shortage. And I want to be very clear that all of these circumstances, conditions, phenomenon that occur outside of Oxnard, around us in the world, affect us as a city organization as well. No local government, no city hall is immune from all of these activities. So here are, again, just some highlights, some examples. With regard to the supply chain issues, a quick example for our fire vehicle. Prior to everything falling apart with COVID and everything thereafter that ensued, when we ordered the trucks, it would usually take 18 months to receive them. And now we're being told it should take 38 months before we can receive them. And we also had issues with Ford, where we ordered a handful of pickup trucks for our fire department, and it was Ford who needed to cancel and also delayed delivery. On the police side, very similar. Before COVID, it took about 8 months to deliver a police vehicle that was ordered. And in November of 2021, actually Ford on this one canceled the order. And we still have some orders out with Ford that are delayed. And then Ford's not the only manufacturer. Dodge, we ordered 24 Dodge Durango patrol vehicles, and those are also delayed. Dodge has notified the city that they plan to start production of the vehicles soon. So this could result in the delivery of vehicles in an estimated 6 months from the start of production. But yet to be seen when we will actually receive them. So here, I know this is hard to read, but I'm gonna read the highlighted. These are a few examples with regard to public works. And going from left to right, the first one has to do with the ASR well project and the delay in getting the pumps. And what's highlighted in this letter that they sent us, basically they're saying that they have a current placeholder in our system, and the ship out date could be as late as 2027. So this is the parts that are required to manufacture the pumps that we ordered to go into the SRA wells. Next is an example for the traffic signal equipment. And a quote, they say that there will be a 6 to 8 week delay in obtaining the components necessary to complete the build of the field monitor units. So they can't even, the companies that assemble these units for us, they can't even get the parts to assemble before they can deliver to us. And then finally, with regard to our trash cans in the parks, we have an email from a company called, I think, Belson Outdoors, that's printed up there, and they're telling us that there's an 18-week lead time. And this is, I can't see the date, but whenever we received this, they told us expect delivery at no sooner than 18 weeks out. So those are just a few. We have many, many more examples of the delay in us being able to get materials and supplies and things that we need to do our work. Next is quite obvious, inflation. Everyone feels it. And again, I want to reiterate, as an organization, as a local government that also needs to purchase, okay, we don't purchase milk or eggs that I know of, but we purchase gas. But we also purchase goods out in the market as well. So one quick example is our garbage trucks run on compressed natural gas. Of course, we all believe in that because it's better for the environment. But in recent months, the price of the gas that we purchase for our garbage trucks to run around the city to collect garbage and green recycling and dry recycling, their cost has tripled for us. Again, I raise that to just as a reminder. I think it should be intuitive for people to understand that to run the city, we also buy things. We purchase gas, we purchase electricity. We actually also have to purchase water. Okay, next, labor shortages. Again, I think it's quite known, especially in the private sector, how hard it has been for companies to hire, but that holds true in the public sector as well. So here is a publication from NeoGov, which is a government-oriented trade publication. This is from last summer, and what they highlight is that 20% of state and local government agencies have reduced services to citizens due to staffing shortages, and this was published last July. There's another government publication, Western Cities, and here the highlight here is they state that at the start of 2022, state and local governments, this is across the nation, employed 695,000 fewer people than before the pandemic. So clearly there's been an exodus from the public sector as well as the private sector. At the turn of this year, early January, the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, stated that as a nation we have a structural labor shortage. It's the first time I've heard that term used with regard to labor. And he specifically talked about the baby boomer effect. And to summarize that very quickly, what we're seeing across the nation now is that the baby boomer generation is actually retiring now, in large part because of their age bracket today, while there was an expectation that that was going to occur about 15 or so years ago. It didn't occur because of the Great Recession, which really hit everyone's 401ks really hard. So the boomers didn't have, there was not a big exodus when it was originally expected. So the need to continue working, as well as the benefits of modern medicine, and in some cases, healthy eating, probably not in many cases, people were physically able to work longer. But now they are truly, truly aging out. And it coincides with this other interesting phenomenon socially, which is the replacement workforce generationally is not able to replace these positions at the rate that the boomers are exiting. And part of that has to do with in recent years, the youngest workforce generation, for whatever sets of reasons, and I don't believe there's clear understanding yet, is not applying for jobs as much and is not as interested in working, certainly not in traditional 9-to-5, Monday through Friday jobs. So we don't know how that smooths out. But in the meantime, you have the boomers leaving, and also with them go a lot of institutional knowledge and experience. And the replacement workforce is not keeping up with the exodus. So that is significant across the country. A few quick examples. Recently, just a few weeks ago, Walmart and CVS announced that they're going to need to cut their pharmacy hours and their pain point due to staffing squeeze. So Kaiser, back in December, sent a notice to members also saying expect longer wait times because they have not only an increase in patients, but they also have a staffing shortage. So a little bit more focus on local government. Here you can see some comparisons with a few of our cities and county that we have in our basket for comparisons. And you can see we're not too far out of whack with everyone else's vacancy rates, be it the city of Ventura, the county, city of Santa Barbara, cities of Anaheim, Pasadena, Simi Valley, or Thousand Oaks. So we're right in the middle of the pack there. So currently we are just under 14% vacancy rate across our workforce. We can drill down just a little bit there. Pre-COVID, our vacancy rate was hovering around 9%, and again, now we're at just under 14%. And then you can see if we look by department, you can see we have some severe shortages. I'm going to take everyone over 20% vacancy, which is community development, cultural and community services, finance. IT is severe at over 55%. And those are just gross numbers, but for every department, their vacancy rates have significant and severe negative impacts on the amount of work and, in some instances, the quality of work that they can crank out. Here's a very specific example for our police department. This is a 5-year snapshot, and you can see first and foremost that 5 years ago, many more people at the outset applied to work in the police department. So the sheer number of applications have gone down in the last 5 years. And I think there are other social trends there across the nation that impact the number of people wanting and willing to apply to work in law enforcement. But the outcome is it impacts us significantly. And what this means is the ratio of qualified applicants is much reduced. And this is a specific example out of police, but it holds true across all of our departments. In addition to in-house staff, there's actually a shortage, again, because this impacts probably every segment, every sector of the American economy. It impacts the contractors as well here in the county, where there's a lack of a deep pool of contractors. And in some cases, people aren't even, because they have a full workload, they're not responding to our RFPs. Our consultants, who we normally rely on to get extra work done or expedited work done, they're also at max capacity and in a position where it's very easy for them to turn down work. Again, either we get either no responses to our RFPs or very limited ones. And once more, our own staffing. And it's hard, and so we are woefully understaffed. And for the first time in a very long time, it isn't because we don't have the revenue to hire staff. There aren't people applying. A couple things I want to say about that, though, because I know everyone in our workforce is desperate for more colleagues to join our workforce and essentially to have the cavalry show up. But I've made it clear to our department directors and to our HR department that we will not hire out of a panic. We still need to filter and vet and scrutinize the applicants. It would be worse actually if we start hiring out of a panic just to get bodies in the building, because we could get stuck with very, very, very poor performers in the future, and that's actually a disservice to the community. And then probably not a surprise to anyone, but there's yet another lawsuit from Mr. Aaron Starr, and this one filed back in mid-December, which challenges the city's authority to issue the street bonds and the ERP bonds, our city's primary software system for all of our business transactions, which the council initially approved in, I think it was it October of 2022? Oh yeah, it says it right there, October 18th. So that was to go get street construction bonds for major streets and alleyways worked in our effort to improve the pavement condition index, which essentially is a technical way of saying to improve the quality of our streets across the city. So that was potentially a $30 million bond for the construction, and the next round of funding for the ERP transition, $9 million worth. So unfortunately, due to Mr. Starr's latest lawsuit, that is frozen. So we cannot proceed with that until we get through this litigation. And if it's not obvious to anyone, I want to make it clear that this pretty much precludes us from getting any other bonds for major capital/construction projects in the near future as well. So from that perspective, and there is some interesting irony in it with regard to the bonds for the road work, but we'll talk about that at another time. But for now, the road work, the additional road work that our staff has planned for and that the council has approved for us to do across the city will not take place, certainly not in 2023. So with that, what I'd like to do at this part of the oral discussion is pause to see if council members have, and the mayor have any questions for any of our department heads, either about the progress we are making or any of the issues here that are slowing us down. So I want to take a pause for that real quick.
Before I go to the council members, I'd just like to add a little bit of what the city manager has mentioned. And to me, I was looking at the priorities, at the shifting gears, and also the modifying our ARPA projects, and also looking at our timeline for priorities from 5 to 7 years, and also the restoration budgets. And looking at exactly what I had all this written down, but you said it very well, so I'm not going to repeat it. But I think that the priorities that are extremely important, just like our budget, to me, the priorities in our budget is a roadmap that we put together. And like anything else, because of what you mentioned, you have major events around the world, as you mentioned before, the high inflation, the supply chain, the hiring staff. In fact, you and I met the other day over at St. John's with the college, with the St. John's, with the Clinicas, and they all are having a hard time hiring people. In fact, I think Clinicas is already going out of state to try and get people to come in to help us out. So things are going to slow down, as you mentioned, because of those items that are happening. But in the meantime, I'm sure that our residents heard what you said, and our priorities that we're looking at are going to have to be extended. But we need our people to help us out. We need our residents to assist us, to make sure that they follow us on this projects. And it's extremely important. That's going to make the city of Oxnard a much better place to live, and I think it's important that we do that. But I just wanted to share that because I've been with you, Alex, and we met with quite a few people. We met the other day with some people from Ventura County, and they're experiencing the same thing. So we're not alone on this subjects. And I have before we have to go to council members, I have some items that I'd like to move, and items I'd like to move if we're there yet or not. But okay, so we have Councilman Teran who has been waiting to ask additional questions. But I just wanted to share that. But I think it's important what you said, and it was highlighted very properly, and I think that and easily to understand by the public. So Teran. Okay.
Teran will indulge me. Just before we get on that, we remove the last slide, I'd like to have the city manager inform us we are vigorously defending against Aaron Starr's lawsuit, correct?
I'll turn that to the city attorney.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, so the lawsuit, as stated before, was filed in the middle of December. And Mr. Starr has delayed it somewhat by first challenging the first judge that was assigned to the case. And then he had to seek a extension of time to publish the summons, because essentially he is suing everybody in the city that has an interest in the issuance of these bonds that were approved in October of last year. So yes, we are vigorously defending. We have not, given the timing of the case and as I said, with the publication of the notice, we are proceeding, but the case is at its early stages and will take several months to resolve at the trial level, and then will take up to an additional 2 years if there is an appeal out of the ruling from the trial court.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you, Councilman Turin and Mayor. And the point that I brought it up is I don't want the residents to think we're sitting back and just waiting to see what happens.
And just, Councilman Turin, Steve and Mr. City Manager, bonding the projects that we have online, it's like trying to buy a car and not be able to buy some monies to buy that car. So we're trying to buy a house and we can't qualify for a mortgage. So in order for people to understand, those bonds are so important for us to have in order to continue with our projects. And that's slowing down our priorities, slowing down our budget, slowing down the maintenance of our streets, of potholes and so forth, as the gentleman said initially, the speaker that spoke, so I think people need to understand that. Thank you. Councilman Tran.
Thank you. And I had a set of questions regarding what we've seen thus far, but since we're on this subject, I think it's important for folks to know that there's sometimes a narrative that folks will say, oh, well, the city's going to put this on the credit card. Well, when we look at equitable service across multiple generations, when we look at a road, when we had a road that was paved, if it was used with street bonds 20 years ago, the folks who 20 years ago were driving and paying into taxes at that time. Now, me as an adult, I'm also driving on those roads and paying into these taxes. Why would it not be fair for me to also pay my fair share? Why should I expect my parents or my grandparents to pay for everything for me and I get to benefit from it in that way? So that is certainly one narrative you'll hear is, oh, well, our children and our grandchildren are going to pay for this. Well, yeah, they're going to be adults one day. They won't perpetually be children forever. And they will also enjoy the benefits of these facilities, as will their children when that time comes. So, and I just have to say the irony in the litigation around bonding on streets, especially when there was a measure that was written in 2020 that stated that you will get to this PCI by this date or you will lose Measure O. And I can't help but wonder, was there always a plan to sue and keep us from getting to that goal? And maybe that would have meant sunset no matter what. I mean, I don't know. Those are certainly questions to be asked of the author and proponent of that measure, but whatever, because it just happens to be the same person who's filed this litigation. All right, so going back to the items here, I just want to thank the city manager for the context here that I think the general public needs to be aware of. Not just the city of Oxnard, but cities, counties, school districts, police departments, private industries. Everyone is experiencing inflation. Everyone is experiencing a labor shortage. Everyone is experiencing the shortages in the supply chain. And this is making it difficult as a trifecta to get work done. You don't have the things to do the work. You don't have the people physically to do the work if you even had the materials to begin with. And so I just appreciate that context so people can understand that we're not just sitting on all this funding and letting it sit in the bank. There's work to be done, and I appreciate the highlighting of what has been done thus far, even with the staffing levels we have. And it seems to me that this discussion is important because we need to understand that the people who work for the city of Oxnard and the city of Ventura, city of Camarillo, county of Ventura, they're human beings. They're not robots who can function 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or even function at full efficacy from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock every afternoon. And so we work with the resources we have. People can do as much work as they can do. We can't just continue taking these projects on and assume that someone who works as a 1 FTE is going to work at 1.25 effort. And so I appreciate this information. I hope the public sees what is being explained here and what we have to look for as a constraint of the city and how we can realistically continue to make positive progress towards these goals, even in spite of potentially intentional roadblocks such as the litigation that was just brought up. So those are just quick comments, so thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Toronto. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I spent the weekend going through this list, and, you know, very, very recently, we approved Sports Park to move ahead with a very direct approach on soccer and baseball fields. Previous to that, we approved an aquatic center. It started out at 50 million, I think it's back down, or 50-meter pool, now it's back down to a 30-meter pool. And looking at attachment B here that we were given, a lot of the stuff is outlined in red, meaning it's ARPA funded, but it's not going to move forward. And in there are, just at a cursory glance, 6 projects involving parks. So here we are, having approved an aquatic center and sports park as recreation facilities, and then we're going to turn right around and not fund 6 parks that are already existing parks. Plus, because we can't get bonds right now because of the lawsuit, that means that we won't have an aquatic center in the near future. We won't have sports park in the near future. We're eliminating 6 more parks projects out of ARPA funding, and I'm not sure what the alternative is going to be in terms of funding, where that money is going to come from, because you can't, you know, unfortunately, we're not like the federal government where we can raise the debt ceiling, print more money, and just move on down the road and have a good time. It doesn't work that way. We have to be responsible. And I feel just a little bit silly that we've got all these things on the plans and then saying, oh, no money, we're not going to do anything. And I've already started getting calls about Durley Park and other parks. You know, what's going to happen with the money? And my short answer is, I don't know yet. But I don't usually say this, but I'm not real pleased with this approach, but I don't know what the better approach is, other than to say that we've got all these things on our drawing board. And that was my comment a couple of weeks ago, was that when we approved the plan that was submitted to us, we've committed to at least 2 more years of dirt and weeds out there, because we don't have the funding to do anything with that property. We don't have the ability to do anything with that property. We don't have the staff right now. Our staff is working their fingers to the bones trying to keep up with what we got going on, and we're eliminating a lot of that. So I don't like this in any way, shape, or form. I hate to be critical. I'm usually pretty upbeat and supportive of staff, but unfortunately, this is not going to be one of those nights.
Mr. City Manager, as Mayor Pro Tem mentioned Durley Park. I know when we had the town hall meeting the other day, the people said they want Durley Park done and immediately. But the question that we have now, and you mentioned today, staff. How are we going to get somebody to start working on that project? So
that's the next half of the discussion. So I just wanted to see if the council members had any questions about any of the slowdown issues, any of the disruptions.
I just want to bring that up.
We'll get there. We're about to get there.
Thank you. Okay. Councilor Toronto, are you okay now, or I see your lights? Okay, next, go ahead. Okay, Councilor Perelum.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate the comments that have been made. People have to understand the city of Oxnard, the general manager has said, we're not in a situation where money is the problem. This is a unique time for Oxnard. It's materials, it's materials and staffing. But the issue is, and I hope that you're aware that there's an individual in Southern California that won a tremendously huge lottery, a couple of $1 billion. and he hasn't collected it. He hasn't collected it, and if time goes enough, he's gonna lose it. And we'll all say, what a damn fool this guy was, or lady, or lady. The city of Oxnard has been given an opportunity with funds that have very tight restrictions on what you can do with the funds. And there's an opportunity that we can lose the funds because we don't have the projects for them. Or we have projects that are allocated to be funded, but we don't have the funding. And this is an opportunity to move monies around. And I am not challenging Mayor Pro Tem McDonald at all. It's an opportunity to move money around and do the best we can so that we don't leave anything on the table. It's all taxpayer money. I got a lecture from a gentleman about it's all taxpayer money. He's right. But it's considered free money to the city of Oxnard by me. We were gifted this. If we don't use it, we would be damn fools. But we use it to the best benefit for the residents of Oxnard. Whatever this council decides, I do hope there is no money left over that we go, what a damn fool, just like the guy that didn't collect his winning lottery ticket. That's all I wanted to say this, because there's an opportunity here to maximize, to make a silk purse out of a pig's ear. You're in a situation that matters. And I'm not looking, the city staff understands that better. The council, you have a choice. And we can maximize what we have to the best of the residents' benefit. We may have to offend and tick off some people because they don't get what they want right now, and they're not willing to see the rationale of using what you have in the way of funding. It's not the money's all in one pocket. There's restrictions on the money. If there were no restrictions, this would be a different story. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. City Manager, go ahead.
Diego, can you put the cue cards back up? All right, so here's what we're gonna do now. This is the shifting gears part. So recently, it was Lunar New Year. And up there on the board, you can see the 12 animals of the Lunar New Year. And this year is officially the year of the rabbit.
The rabbit, yeah.
Unless you're from Vietnam, in which case it's the cat, but I won't argue that today. But I propose for Oxnard that it will be the year of the tortoise. And before you go and malign the tortoise and make memes, I just want you to know the tortoise is renowned for both its wisdom and longevity. And even in Western culture, we all know the children's story of the race between the tortoise and the hare, and we know who wins. So in Oxnard, it's not going to be the year of the cat or the rabbit. It's going to be the year of the tortoise. We are going to move with intent, but it's going to be really slow. Now, having said that, even though we are significantly delayed on our projects, have no fear, the council, this body here, has a lot of policy work to do in the next couple years. Obviously, tonight we're shifting gears and adjusting the ARPA projects and the priorities. You've made the decisions, the key decisions about the Aquatic Center and Sports Park. We've got the bonding litigation ahead of us. Obviously, we're headed into budget. We are at some point in the next 2 years, we need to have a public discussion about the community facilities district. I'm considering proposing a tax rate cap for new CFDs in the future. We have to revisit and recommit our downtown vision. We have to continue with the US EPA with work at Halico, and at some point we're going to have to make some policy decisions there. We've got our utility rates. We have the water one coming up on Saturday as the first workshop, but we also have garbage as well as sewer. We're going to need a public policy discussion about the landscape maintenance districts, the LMDs. I am considering, I'm just putting that out now, a potential moratorium on warehousing and hazardous material storage going forward. We have to make policy decisions about the future of museum, what the future of the protected property at Ormond Beach, the future of the Performing Arts Center, what we want to do with criteria and policy for our collective Quimby funds for each of the neighborhoods that have them. And I've already mentioned sewer and water rates. So there's still a lot of policy work to be done by the city council in the next 48 months or so. So don't think this means that your council meetings will get any shorter. Okay, so with that, keeping with the Asian theme, I just have to remind you, as hard as it is, you can't give and make everybody happy and give everybody everything everywhere all at once. And I know that as elected officials, there's a ton of pressure on you to do this all the time. And it's not really possible under normal circumstances, and it's absolutely not possible under present circumstances. So please keep this in mind. And if you haven't seen the movie, it's really good. All right, so what we're gonna walk through here, and I'm gonna have our Public Works Director and our Assistant City Manager help quarterback this, but we need to discuss modifying our ARPA projects, as well as that, of course, has to be in balance with our capital improvement projects. The modifying council priorities and the outlook on restoration budgets, I think I hope it's obvious in terms of being realistic with what we can get done in what amount of time, as well as just a philosophic way to have the outlook on the restoration budgets. We'll also say that, again, what we're doing here tonight is modifying our timelines more than anything else. We are not looking to throw away projects. There's I think a very small handful with very good reason, small projects that we don't believe are needed at all. We'll discuss those, but overall, what we publish and what you've had since we published this agenda, the recommendations to modify the ARPA projects, as well as we published the current CIP project list. And what the initial sets of recommendations come from our staff, and they are a distillation based on current workload and so on, and they are all done with objective criteria. What I don't have staff do is guess at community politics, right? So there's no, in terms of the documents that were published that we're working from, there's no politics in there. That's the council's responsibility, is to balance and juggle community needs, which sometimes are in line with the staff's analysis, and sometimes they're not. And that's normal and fine, nothing wrong with that. So what we're looking for tonight is just some very clear direction, and hopefully we can arrive at worst at consensus, and we will bring everything back formally during the budget process. So with that, I'm going to ask someone can come up. They're both tall, but we'll get the tallest one up at the podium. And our Assistant City Manager's there.
Mr. City Manager, go ahead.
Adam Smith is also here to help. He knows this list inside out.
City Manager, can you get a little bit deeper into how you do not have staff make political decisions? Political decisions are driven by elected officials.
Right, so it's not.
And the reason I'm asking that is some people don't understand that when they call their local councilman and they complain about a baseball field or sand on the street or not trash picked up, those are political issues that a councilman can give to city manager or staff, that if it's a city issue, they take care of it. But to drive a political issue at a staff member is, in your opinion, that's not done. Is that, and a little deeper, please, because it's a big deal.
So I'll summarize. Again, it's not about staff decisions, it's about the staff recommendations. And when I asked staff to review the various projects, existing projects, approved projects, projects that are have started or they're mid-cycle or they're in full construction and what have you, that they make an objective analysis and not worry about, well, this neighborhood has been upset longer, or that neighborhood deserves something, or that neighborhood hasn't had anything. That's the council's job, right? The people who are elected to represent the community. So I asked staff just to make a straightforward, objective analysis. And again, it doesn't always align with community needs, right? So if they're looking at, for example, timeline, workload, the amount of staff, the expertise we have in-house versus expertise we would have to go and get from consultants, that's what they look at. So I also want to go back and just, again, our goal tonight in making these adjustments and modifications and shifting gears is essentially to preserve the ARPA dollars that we were granted by the federal government, because those come with tight deadlines. And we now know we can't possibly meet those deadlines. And what we don't want to do is be in a position where we have to return that money. So we're changing some of the projects that we know we can get completed and out the door within the ARPA deadline. So we are recommending reassigning those projects. And what that does is it extends timelines for other projects that have already been vetted and approved by the council. Now there is, and our Public Works Director, Mr. Wolf, will walk us through this, but there are nuances for what you can juggle here, having to do with what is equivalent workloads, not just dollar value, the timing of different projects, as well as, again, expertise and the funding sources for various projects. So I hope that is responsive to Councilmember Perrello, and I'll turn it back to the council.
Okay. So Michael, do you want to share anything, or you want us to start?
I don't have anything to add that City Manager didn't add. I'm prepared to answer any questions.
So we're going to start off with Councilwoman.
Mayor,
go ahead.
Just for a second, I'm wondering if Mr. Wolf would just help kind of frame the discussion and talk a little bit about the nuances that the city manager referenced, where if there's going to be discussion about reprioritizing what's in the CIP, some projects can't replace other projects. For example, you can't have a park-focused project replace a streets type of project that's currently in the CIP. I'm just wondering if you could talk briefly about that so we understand that part of the discussion before we move forward.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council members, Michael Wolf, Director of Public Works. And I'll add to the beginning of that from my perspective, this is not a discussion about whether projects have merit or not. They all have merit, and they all should be done. It's a discussion about when can they be done, a timeline discussion. And so with that, I think where you're going, Councilmember Turan, is that we have lots of different projects that have different uniqueness to them. And I'll give an example. We have projects that are funded through utility funds, where we have engineers and project managers that have expertise in those areas. And to ask that project manager to maybe work on a project that's not in his or her expertise is not going to be fair to the project or to the employee. And so to look at, if we're talking about a project with flexible timelines that may be in a utility, to say, hey, can we replace that with a parks project, that's not an equal trade or equal swap, if you will. And so from that perspective, I would hope we would look at this from those kind of buckets, where we have utility projects that if you wanted to maybe move around utility projects, they certainly could be moved around together. Where we have civil horizontal construction projects that are really geared towards a heavy civil component, paving, sidewalk, those need to be looked at because the expertise is in those areas of those project managers and those engineers. And then from the other perspective is a workload issue. So it's not necessarily always a dollar conversation. It's not about a $10 project and another $10 project are equally the same from a workload standpoint. There are very complex $10 projects and very straightforward $10 projects. They are not the same from a staffing standpoint. We may have to assign 2 or 3 engineers or project managers to a very complex project that has multiple jurisdiction interactions or multiple funding sources or very complex analysis or very long drawn out design and evaluation stages. That's a different workload, even though they're both $10, right? So that's part of that. It's not an equal trade or equal flexibility, if you will, for projects just because it's one project versus one project. So I think that kind of frames some of the setup here. And the last piece I'll add is when we noted in our spreadsheet, specifically for the capital projects component, is where those projects are in their phase. So meaning a project that's in design or currently active in design or construction to trade to otherwise potentially move that project down the priority list for a project that hasn't started yet, then the timeline is of issue there. We're already potentially through a design phase or already into construction, and to stop that project, it's not only stopping the project, but potentially costing actual redo money in the future versus a project that may only be in the planning phase. And so that perspective needs to be a component of the conversation as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you for that explanation. And just last thing I'll point out, as Mr. Wolf just mentioned in his last statement, if we look at the CIP project list and we see the different phases that our current projects are in,
Some pending.
we have a number in construction, a number in design, and then a good number in planning. And anything that's in the design phase has had X number of staff hours and effort already dedicated to it. And I'm just hoping that the council and the public understands that any ask in the one-for-one scenario that Mr. Wolf just gave, even if we have one project that can be traded out for a like project where we take something on the CIP list and prioritize it down where it's not going to happen, well, I want to point out everything that is what's referred to as above the line in the sand is currently in the design phase, and they're pretty far along in their efforts. And so I just wanted to point that out, and I'll end my part and turn it back to the mayor and just saying that I certainly had some things that definitely jumped out at me that I wanted to absolutely go to bat for, but after thoughts about it and talking with staff, including Mr. Wolf, looking at our current CIP list, I cannot in good faith see anything there that should be prioritized down, given that it's already in process. There's progress that's been made and they're moving forward. For example, if I wanted to advocate for one of these parks, if we do a like-for-like project, am I willing to move Del Sol Park's improvements down in priority? And that park's also very much in need. So these items are not going away. They're not being defunded. They're not going to be something that's just, we're going to scrap the idea. We just can't do them right now in the ARPA timeline that's assigned to it. And so those are my comments. I'll send it back to the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's a good explanation. That way we don't commingle things, you know, and I think, like you said, keep them all in a certain bucket, so because you don't want to put a mechanic to go out there and do some park work or whatever and so forth. Good explanation. Councilor Basua?
Thank you. I will start with this mess. Okay, so I am looking at attachment B, ARPA recommendations and modification, item 9 in red. So as far as this whole sheet here, I'm only going to address, I'm only going to address the items in red. I noticed what staff did. They took the construction and designs projects and basically we're doing IT. That's kind of what it looks like in the blue. They seem to be more IT projects than the construction projects.
Councilwoman Basua, the projects in blue are if you make recommendations to delay by moving the projects in red, you have funding available, and we don't want to leave $1 of the ARPA money unspent. So the projects in blue are new recommendations from staff that we can spend that money quickly. Yes, the majority of those are IT because they are already underway and we can just move the money there.
Okay, and the items in red in our attachment B are items that staff has determined that they will have a difficult time pushing forward.
The red, ARPA money red.
Right?
That's
within the timeline.
Within the timeline of ARPA. Okay, so when we first started this, the Pleasant Valley Park, that is in my district, the replacement of the playground was extremely essential because of health and safety. It's not that the equipment is outdated, it's the equipment isn't there, the equipment is broken, there is nothing there. We've got pieces missing. So that in itself, I really want to fight for to keep. But if we go to attachment C, which is the current CIP list, under item 11, it says park, Wilson and Pleasant Valley Park. And it says construction. Can somebody tell me what that means? I mean, because I see it in item 11. I see it in item 114, item 65, and that's it.
So we do have an active construction project in Pleasant Valley. It's for the restroom improvements. It's funded by CDBG, so that is that project that's active in construction. It's NoHo construction, $417,000 is the approximate construction
Yeah, and
cost.
that's happening right now.
Correct, that's the active
Okay.
construction project.
Okay, and then, thank you for that clarification. And item 65 on the CIP?
You're gonna make me put my glasses on, aren't you? I'm gonna have to consult our CIP book. So while I do that, I just wanted to say that there's a reason why it's me and not Tatiana sitting up here. She would have all these answers probably off the top of her head. It goes back to staffing. She's not here. She's left the city after almost 5 years.
That's an extremely significant fact.
And I wish I had all these 150 projects memorized.
What's it say? What's it say on this?
It just says Wilson and Pleasant Valley Parks under design.
So we do have some general park improvement projects in our CIP, so I'm going to make that determination that's one of those just general park improvement projects. That's not specific to restrooms
Or playgrounds.
or playgrounds.
So if I was to swap, because it's under parks, would I be able to swap 65 for item 9 in the ARPA recommendations?
So 9 in ARPA being the Pleasant Valley Park repair improvements.
Yes.
And that is for playground equipment, which is not in the Parks Master Plan. I'm just reading the note from 9 for
Right.
$600,000.
But it is under item 114, Pleasant Valley Park Playground Planning.
Right, so that would be the playground in the 114, but I think her question is with 65 being above the line, 9 from ARPA replacing 65. And I would say that from all the sort of setup conversations, that would be an equal.
Equals, so I would make a recommendation that we swap those.
Those. Okay.
So when we make recommendations, are we voting on each recommendation?
No, we just move
If there is a sense of consensus, we don't need to vote, because
Okay, so
you're giving us direction.
So I would like to make that direction, that we make that change.
Councilman Turan?
Thank you. Just real quickly, I'm hoping we can confirm item 65, just because I seem to recall that with Wilson Park, there was also a grant for a new playground, inclusive playground that was going to go over there. I just want to make sure that if we swap these out, that we won't be prioritizing that grant funding down in the CIP list.
Right, so in the CIP list, we list the kind of 4 objective criteria. On 65, you can see that's grant funded. So, and it's already in design. So it goes back to we're potentially changing out a project that we've already spent time and money in through the design process that's grant funded for a project we haven't started the design.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
And so, again, this is all prioritization and direction from council,
Yeah.
but
And on the Wilson one, on the Wilson one, council member, it doesn't say it's grant funding. If you notice the project titles, staff did a tremendous job putting grant deadlines to be determined. So I'm going to assume that if there is not a note on there, it is not grant funded.
So in the CIP list, I don't know which attachment that is in the staff report. So where it says 65, it's on the top of the CIP list on like the 3rd page. We list out that this project, Wilson and Pleasant Valley Parks, are grant funded projects.
Okay, it's not on our list that we received.
It's in this column, the third column.
Oh, I see. It says grant funding on the, right, so I was looking at the grant deadline. Some of the notes that staff wrote have the deadlines. Does this particular have a deadline? Do we know?
I do not know that right now.
Okay,
I'm hoping we
Well,
can confirm that.
Yeah, we can confirm it, but every grant will have at least some level
some
of
kind of deadline.
Whether, the question is whether or not it's before ARPA, I think is really the question.
Okay. So I would like to make that recommendation that we swap those two out and allow the Pleasant Valley Park Playground replacement to take place.
Thank you. Steve?
Mayor, I would just like to ask, not staff, but I'd just like to ask,
Go ahead.
when we do swap something out and we have Wilson and Pleasant Valley, both of those are in totally different districts and totally different council member districts, totally different neighborhoods. Will one of the, say, will Pleasant Valley, the issue benefit and Wilson will sort of
Or the
take a back
districts?
seat? I don't know how that's going to work.
I see what he's saying.
And I
So if you
appreciate.
take, if you take from one district, will they replace it? Will they replace it for fairness?
Well, I would assume, so what I'm asking is that the current project that's in Pleasant Valley be replaced with the playground. So the thing that will be pushed down is Pleasant Valley, not Wilson. I'm not asking them to touch Wilson. I'm just asking them
Oh,
for
it's a
Pleasant Valley.
clarification.
Right, so
Okay.
it's kind of like for
Makes
like,
sense.
you know, whatever park improvements were there, I'd like to see the
But you're
playground
not
instead.
recommending that.
Exactly, I'm not
Okay.
recommending anything on Wilson. Wilson stays, we just ask that Pleasant Valley playground be put instead of whatever improvements were going to happen, whether it was seeding of the grass, whatever it was.
Makes sense.
Just, that goes down on the,
And
on the
I
list.
wasn't implying that, it was just that I was asking the question because the.
Right,
way
no,
was-
I understand, I understand.
Steve, you had some, you want to share?
Yes, Mayor and council members, I just wanted to add for the information that the Wilson Playground and the Community Center Park East Playgrounds have already been purchased and are in the city's yard. So this was one of those situations where we were able to acquire the playground equipment, but because of staffing shortages in the economy, we weren't able to get the contractor to install it. So any actions on those two parks, we already have the playgrounds, we just need to install them.
You have the equipment already. Okay, good. Thank you. So that's.
Thank you.
That works.
Okay,
works.
so that's it, Mr.
I have a other question on item 76 of the attachment B and the ARPA recommendations, storm drain, diamond bar. This was not a council priority, but it was in the diamond bar neighborhood, and it does say to fund at a later date. Is that something that we can see in the future in the CIP? I understand it can't get done now, and I totally understand why it can't be done during this time period, but I just want to make sure that in the near future, it does get funded.
So you're just adjusting out of ARPA?
Yeah, yeah.
Correct.
I totally, and as far as, at least with me, as far as everything else that I see, I'm okay with.
May I just add that we are moving forward with the wall component of the
Thank you.
diamond.
I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you. Councilman Teran, you're next.
I simply have comments, Mayor. I'll let my colleagues go first, and then when they're all done, I would like to go after that.
I just have one here, and that's item 85. You know, the city hall, the annex. You know, that we need to adjust that out of ARPA monies. And I just want to share with our city council that we've already painted this city hall here at 305, and we're now looking at 300. And the reason I've asked we can adjust that. We can move that. You know, that would be out of ARPA money, as long as we adjust it and put it some other place. And the reason I'm asking that we look at that, continue looking at the annex, is because the annex building across the street is over 60 years old, and it's externally needs a lot of maintenance and so forth. And I just want to share, and I shared that before, that when people look at that building, and I'm sure I mentioned that to our chief, they look at the police department, they look at our annex, and they say, is that the prison, is that the jail? You know, and it's kind of embarrassing, and I kind
The
of share
city
that.
manager agrees with you, Mayor.
And I kind of show that because we're the entrance of downtown, and we were always telling people how to maintain the buildings in downtown and make sure that they follow up on cleaning up and so forth. So we're the example that, so I just believe that we need to continue to move it out, ARPA money right now, as you mentioned, and adjust it accordingly. And of course, you know, that building, again, is one of 28 buildings that we have, you know, that have a lot of deferred maintenance. I think you mentioned that before. So I think that I'd like to actually keep that or move that from ARPA money to adjust it accordingly as per your recommendations, Michael. And of course, that's basically all I have to say, because I think that it's important that we work on that. And I just want to share that because I been wanting those buildings painted for, God, maybe 20, 25 years. I know other city managers promised us before that we were going to paint this building and we were going to do X, Y, and Z. And I just mentioned to Alex that I hope we don't have to wait another 10 years to paint that building, because it's just something that needs to be done. And I equate that to my house. If my house was in the neighborhood and needed painted the way this building did, you'd be surprised that my wife would tell me, you better paint that building ASAP. But I just want to share that with you, so.
Mr. Mayor, may
Do
I
you want to
make,
leave that?
And I want to, we can move that 85, you know, out of ARPA monies and place it some other place.
so just a couple of comments before I ask a question on this. One, as originally scoped, it was a painting project. When we bring in concrete experts that have already looked at the building, this is not just a straightforward painting process. We're going to have to take a look at the construction methodology of the building, whether or not painting it actually, just painting it is actually the next best step. So this is a little more involved than just doing a painting project, and that's one of the reasons why it has not moved forward for a while, is because we need to have some expertise in terms of concrete construction. This is, you know, an older building, as you mentioned, and just painting it may not be in our best interest in terms from a structural standpoint. Also add, then if we're going to add a project to the timeline, then we need to discuss which other projects above the line are we looking at moving from a different timeline.
And I think if we don't do it now, right now we're looking at 500,000 or whatever. If we wait a couple of years, then we're talking 2 million or 3 million and so forth. So anyway, so thank you for that. Councilman Peralta.
Those are good points, Mayor, but as you said, if we're going to put above, we need to take one below. What would you recommend taking off?
Well, I leave that up to you, Michael. You know, you're the pro in that.
So we'd have to look at one of the top 93 projects on the CIP list.
Would that be under building, as far as the type?
Whatever, and my recommendation is whatever you recommend, because you're the, I think it's important that we prioritize the projects that need attending right off compared to the annex building.
You want to not do the council chamber remodel?
But move it.
You want to move it? I mean, you could.
I don't think the council chamber project it's already, this one.
It's already done.
So
Already done.
It's not on the list.
Oh, so it's not even on the
It
list?
looks it looks beautiful.
Wait,
So some of the examples would be the, I just had it.
Mayor.
Give me a minute.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Oh, here it is,
Mr.
the Wilson Center Complex roof replacement. That would be what I would consider equivalent workload type of project. So if you looked at the second column on the CIP list, it says type. You can look at the building ones. So police station emergency backup generator, that's a building one. Oxnard Transit Center improvements, that's a building one. Oxnard fire stations, that's not an equivalent because that's a much higher complex project, but that's a building one. So it's something like that that we're going to have to discuss about moving down on the priority list so that we can do the the work over at the,
Well, I think the police department, fire department, those people, that to me, they're priority, so. So I think any place that you believe that we should put it, I'd be okay with that.
Mayor.
Councilor Tran?
Thank you. Specific to this discussion, I think what Mr. Wolf is saying is that if we wish to have the painting of the annex building across the street, he's looking for direction from the council on what are we going to prioritize down on the list in order to place that building there. And so the examples he gave would be the roof replacement at the Wilson Senior Center, the generator for the police department.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. I don't want to prioritize over those items that are really important, like a roof or so forth.
I understand that. I think unfortunately those are our options. If we wish to have that building still on the list for painting, we have to decide or give direction to Mr. Wolf what has to be prioritized down. Those are some examples of the options we have. And a question, Mr. Wolf, would number 68, the Civic Center West Wing building improvements, be alike, or is that more complex than the painting project that's at discussion here?
the Civic Center one is a little more complex, but we are well within we've moved to the design. So, I mean, that would be costing us a lot of rework if we put that design on hold, went through a code change, so that there's actually a lot of, I wouldn't call it lost work, but certainly makes that design stale and could cost us more money.
I absolutely appreciate that explanation.
So one of the examples that I did mention was the Carnegie Museum seismic analysis. To me, that would be an equivalent workload.
That would be potentially something that we could look at, yeah, yes.
Well, I recognize, though, that in the city manager's presentation on priority discussions we're going to have, or policy discussions, the Carnegie is one of them, and what we're going to do with it in the near future. And we've had requests for conversation about that from members of the public for the Carnegie. And so I, at this juncture, wouldn't be ready to prioritize that down any more than we've had in the past. And I do have a note here, Mayor, just regarding this particular item. I believe you deserve full credit on the effort to beautify the City Hall campus, because it's part of the downtown, and the city should do our part to take care of the aesthetics of this area. And I do want to point out, Mayor, that
I know.
full credit for you that this building we're sitting in right now, the paint on it looks amazing. The murals have brightened the 3rd Street corridor more than they've looked in decades, and the parking structure that our rec department has dedicated volunteer time to add murals to looks amazing. And I understand the importance to you of the annex across the street, but just know that this is what they're asking for, is what are we willing to replace?
Let me back up. That's important to me, Councilmember. It's important to the community because it's not our building, it's a people's building, and we need to take care of it. It hasn't been done for 60 years, you know, so. But right now, my recommendation to Michael is whatever you believe is the best. I don't want to go out there and eliminate, you know, the roofs or HVAC and so forth, so.
Maybe we can just make it item 151 on the CIP.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Actually, I appreciate the effort on making the building look better by painting and getting rid of the rust on the metal and everything else, but we really need to concentrate on having offices with roof structures that are intact.
That's right.
And I got more calls over the last couple of weeks about roofs leaking, and I got one about Senior Services Center, and I said, where is it? And they said, well, it's over near Wilson Park somewhere. And I looked on the website and it said it was at 214 South C Street. Well, it's not there. But we have employees in offices with buckets catching the water coming in, and you can paint a building all you want, but if the water's gonna ruin the roof and the walls, then painting is an exercise in futility until you.
Go ahead, Mr. City Manager. I'm sorry.
Are you cutting me off?
No.
Oh.
I did, but go ahead.
Oh, no, you want him to talk? Go ahead, talk.
Come on. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, I think we need to prioritize it. If there's not much sense putting, you know, I mean, it makes sense to put water or paint on walls, But if the roof's gonna leak and ruin it all, then we're gonna have to do it all again. So let's, and I got calls from some of the senior community saying, hey, how do we know there's not mold up in the crawl spaces or whatever? And I don't have a good answer to that. I don't know. But typically where you have continuous roof leaks, there might be a mold problem that we need to look at. And we're talking about health, safety, and welfare, especially of a slightly more vulnerable community. And I would really like the building to look good, but I'd also like it to be safe for people to work in and go into, so.
And I agree 100%. That's why I mentioned before, if we have to replace a roof, we have to do whatever, that's more important than painting the building right now.
Mr. Wolf, item 69 in the CIP, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
That's the Coupa improvements at the River Edge Golf Course. Maybe Mr. Hallett has more information on that project. I will also, before Mr. Hallett talks, I will also mention the complexity of the painting of the City Hall building is less about the painting component and more about the structural analysis. So I just wanted to make sure.
I just wanted to mention that it's really not as important as that. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. The Coupa corrections for the golf course, in the maintenance area, there is basically an outdated fueling station. So this is where all the equipment is fueled up. It does have containment, but it is outdated and does not meet the current requirements. And so the fire department has come by and put us on notice multiple times that this needs to be replaced, and it has been in our CIP for replacement.
And it's a Coupa requirement.
Thank you.
Correct. It's compliance for safety and containment.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager.
So two quick things. One, actually, I wanted to add to what the Mayor Pro Tem was talking about, and I appreciate him highlighting those issues. And I'm also one of the employees that has 2 leaks in my office when it rains. But I think we may have a middle path here, which is, what if we get the assessment for the concrete surface of the building, and if the engineer assessment says it's okay, you can just paint it, then that's an easy job and we'd paint it. But if the engineer says, no, you can't just paint it, but you've got to do some complicated preparation on the cement surface, then we wouldn't proceed with that. That could be a good compromise.
That's good. I like that, because I don't want to be taking priority over leaky roofs and so forth. So why don't we go that route? Councilman Pearl.
Can I get a clarification? I appreciate Mr. Howlett explaining about the fire department put us on notice. Does that jeopardize our liability insurance if something goes wrong and we've been on notice multiple times? Can somebody answer that? Because if it does, I mean, that's...
So similar to our 311 program, when we're put on notice of something, then we should address it.
Okay. I think that's...
Okay, so what, we go ahead and Michael and look at that and see, we can go from there then. Thank you. Okay, let me see, what do we have? Councilman Turan? Oh, he's not there. Councilman Madrigal?
Thank you. I know it's kind of delved into, projects, and I know people arguing for certain projects. And I understand the complexity of this and getting things done. And overall, weirdly, promises were made, promises will not be kept. You were there at our meeting, at our neighborhood meeting in Colonial last summer. I know Tatiana did a wonderful job at that meeting. The one promise she did make, she would see them all there next year, and there would be some improvement, and that's a promise she cannot keep. And that's a promise the city cannot keep as well. Well, obviously, not everyone, or I think the only people in the room that were there were probably 2 or 3 people in the room now. And I completely understand this. We have to do what's best for all. And I actually went through all the red list and went district by district. Actually, the district that loses the most are actually District 4 and District 5. 11 out of the 25 things affect them. The district that loses the least is actually District 6, which only has 7 out of the 25 things. Going through this, I know that, we ultimately have to use the available funds that we have. And I know last time, we had this discussion last year via Zoom. We were there till 1 a.m. arguing away. And one of the things, just simply because it came up recently, and not necessarily that I want to take any money away from this particular cause down on the yellow part on attachment B. One of the things, because the door is open, is number 10, the Oxnard Festival's comeback year grants. I've noticed that some of our usual tenants, and I think you know where I'm coming from here, aren't coming back to our city. They're going to a neighboring city, and I know that part of this grant was for them. Are they going to be receiving any part of this grant on behalf of the city?
No, sir.
Okay. So that's one, and then not that I want to argue it because I want to beat dead horse, because last time it was like an hour argument, but just simply everything in yellow we are for the most part keeping or restructuring, or just everything in yellow stays as part of.
Those are the ones that are indicated that we're not recommending changes, and they're either underway or will be soon. The ones that have the yellow highlight within the yellow box need additional funds now that we've gotten in more detail on the projects. And so you can see part of that column, we initially were given an allocation, and now we need more funds to complete the projects.
Okay, and then with that particular projects, certainly okay with this. I do know that, some residents may be upset all throughout city. I know we're losing out on parks, but at the same time, with everything that's highlighted that is needed, if this goes to fruition, then, they are for good, positive needs in our community. And, it's gonna be something where we're gonna have to work hard for grant funding for parks along the way, because I know we're losing out on that. And, some of the aspects may have changed, priorities might have changed over the last year. But as far as it concerns, as far as we're doing something, and I know it might not be a full-on vote, a full unanimous vote, but if we're making progress for the city, I'm fine with it. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Duran.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank my colleagues for this really good discussion, and thank the staff for obviously what was a lot of work that went into putting this item together, and a lot of moving parts to that as well. So thank you for that, and thank you for the work to make this digestible for the general public as well. And especially thank you to Mr. Smith, who I know has really had a large hand in really coordinating a lot of these moving parts. So thank you. As I mentioned earlier, right away, everything that had to do with the park on here, I felt that, I'm going to go to bat for this. But once I started digging into it, my initial intuitive reaction realized that, well, what am I willing to get rid of, though, or prioritize down in our CIP if that were the case? And that, along with the bike and pedestrian project for Woolley Road, a protected bike path the entire length of Woolley, those are things I absolutely will continue to fight for. And again, these are not going away. These are not being defunded. These are actually being prioritized down for the time being because of staffing capacity issues. And one thing I posed to Mr. Wolf and Mr. Nguyen in a conversation about this was there's also the possibility in all these moving parts that there is a turn in our economy in a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, where now there's folks who come back into the workforce who are going to do project management or civil engineers or anything like that would help us in taking on more workload. And so we could always put these back into play at any time when staffing capacity allows. Or maybe we have a project that finishes earlier or is less complex than we think. There's so many moving parts that this is not the end of the road for any of these items we've discussed tonight. But know that when it comes to our parks, especially in our underserved or communities that have had deferred maintenance for a number of years or in some cases decades, we do need to continue to search for grants that would allow us to do that work and pay for the staffing to do it, but also look at how we're going to continue to serve those communities because it needs to be done. That's always going to be the priority for me is equity in service. So I appreciate this discussion. And I also want to recognize that I'm not the only council member on this dais who's had direct oversight and project management of federal and state funding projects. And so I understand the timelines and everything that's involved and what we have to do in the reporting piece. But I also, speaking for myself, I have no intention of giving any of this money back to the federal government unspent. There are far too many needs in the city of Oxnard for us to not spend this funding that was provided to us to do this type of work. And as Councilmember Perello mentioned earlier, if we had the winning ticket and we didn't cash it in, well, shame on us. And so I absolutely will continue to monitor this, and I thank staff for their efforts on this, and I thank my colleagues for the discussion. And those are my comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Perello?
I just have a question of the city manager, and we have a tremendous amount of staff in the audience. Has something been generated from our conversation that the staff can figure out the allocation and what we potentially will lose if we don't make a specific choice?
I'll ask the room. Anyone notice anything?
That we can look at or?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, this is like a pop quiz. No, I think we're okay because the council discussion was limited in terms of specific items, and I think we're comfortable. So I'll turn to the Public Works Director.
Because
check his comfort level.
I agree totally with Councilman Turan, and I'm sure the rest of it, we do not want to leave any money on the table.
Yeah, so I do have a good comfort level that the information provided tonight will provide us an opportunity to go forward. As mentioned, this is a process that happens every time we do a CIP as well. So this is not the last and only chance. These are projects that get maybe moved from a timeline perspective, but not necessarily not done at all. And so I feel comfortable. I just wanted to check with the Assistant City Manager and with Adam if there was any comments from them.
If we're done discussing the red box, I do think we need a little bit of discussion as it relates to those items and the blue, specifically the cast iron project. And I'd like to turn it back over to Michael to give a little context to that as well.
Can you please repeat that, please?
I'm sorry.
The blue.
If we can jump over to the blue box, those are the ones that Councilwoman Basua pointed out as the new projects. Although the majority of those are IT related, the last project, and that is the cast iron pipe replacement. And I'd like to turn it over to Michael to give some context to that discussion.
So these are our very old and existing cast iron pipe that deliver water, potable water to our customers in certain areas of the city. And so there's a very specific ARPA category for utilities. So it fits very nicely in a very well-defined ARPA category. And I'll also say that it has sort of a twofold, from my perspective, from my chair's position, twofold benefit from a public works standpoint. As you know, we're looking at trying to increase our pavement condition index. And one of those first steps to do that is making sure all of our utilities below that pavement is to a condition that we're not going to be digging it up and right after we pave. And so rightfully so, we have marched through this process where we were replacing some of our very old utilities like cast iron pipe replacements to allow us then to pave. So these are projects, if we don't do cast iron pipe replacement, that we're going to start to have to put on hold the paving project above it. Because it doesn't make sense for us to pave and then have to dig a big trench and replace that pipe right after 1, 2, 5 years right after it. The other thing that I would say is that any savings associated with our water utilities is a savings passed on to our ratepayers. Not a one-for-one savings, not a dollar-for-dollar savings, but as everybody's probably well aware of, our utility rates, specifically our water rates and our wastewater rates, fund capital projects. And so this would be ARPA funds, if used, would not have to be ratepayer funds to use for those same projects. So I think, to me, those are two benefits.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Turan.
Thank you. Regarding the items in the blue box, I think we've had a number of discussions regarding the security posture, the cybersecurity posture of the city. And I would be inclined to make sure that those are prioritized. And if we have this funding available, those can be accomplished readily. And what Mr. Wolf had mentioned regarding cast iron pipes would be another priority for me. In District 2, we just had cast iron pipes replaced in the Fremont North neighborhood, which was an extensive effort, but I believe they were 60 years old, if not older. In Colonia neighborhood, we had that as well, and then I believe the Bryce Canyon North and South neighborhoods. There are plenty of other neighborhoods, and I noticed arterial roads that need cast iron pipes replaced as well. And I just want to state that this is not only so we have the latest and greatest and newest, but cast iron corrodes over time. And if the recent rain events are any indication, if you look at Chatsworth and look at the sinkhole that grew steadily over the course of about 48 hours to swallow 2 large vehicles.
And a truck.
Thank you. We absolutely owe it to have that prioritized, in my opinion. So that way our water infrastructure that we have in the city of Oxnard, we know is up to date and is not going to cost us much more on the back end because we didn't service it on the front end. So whatever we can do to contribute to that, the cybersecurity posture and the cast iron pipes would certainly be my priority of that list.
Councilor Madrigal. Okay. Alex, I just want to thank you for the presentation and Michael, and the excellent presentation because it showed us about the concerns that we have and the moving of the priorities from 5 to 7, I think is extremely important. And also the restoration budgets from 3 to 5 years in order to compensate for all the problems that we're looking at. So excellent presentation, Michael. Good work and our staff. I think that we're heading in the right direction. And I want to share again, we need the public to help us out. We need the public to understand the direction that we're going and why we're doing X and why we're doing Y, and why we're moving ARPA money, because we need to spend that money in a timely manner. So thank you again to our staff, and hopefully, I'm not sure if we have any additional speakers on this, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Zaragoza, we do not have any additional speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you.
Thank you. The direction's clear. And as always, the city is hiring. Thank you.
Okay, doke. Thank you so much. Our next item is city manager item. This is water policy related litigation update. The recommendation the city council receive and file the water policy report and update. And also the item is not subject to California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Public Resources Code number 210801B4. And this was approved by the Public Works Transportation Committee 2-0. And this again was pre-recorded under Measure M, and we have Cherie Klima. Go ahead.
Mayor, I'm happy to answer your questions or any questions by the council members.
Any council members have any questions on this item? I know that you gave us a good presentation before on the potential litigation on water issues and some of the problems that we're having with the Fox Canyon, and potentially we could work with Met and also work with Callegas and also United Water and of course our GMA. So I know that we had an excellent presentation, and I hope that the public got to listen to that presentation, to view it, because it's a really, really important presentation. And again, I'm not sure if we have an update on our drought, if that's going to help us in any way.
Mayor, if you want me to, I can talk a little bit about the State Water Project and some of the most recent estimations that are coming out of the State Water Project.
Yeah, go ahead, please, and that's important. Yeah.
And this is related to, I think, the comment about the drought. So we are currently in our second consecutive year of a 5% allocation. So state water project is water that gets delivered to us through Met and Cayugas. It's about 1/3 of our water that we utilize for our services here in Oxnard. Unprecedented single-digit allocations the last 2 years. We have not seen that ever in the state water project history that I'm aware of. The good news is that with the rain events and the snow events that happened up north and the rain events that happened down here, there's a little more optimism in terms of the allocation. Not one good rainy season or snow season doesn't turn around a multi-year drought. So I don't want anybody to think that the drought is over, because that's not the case. But the preliminary allocation, so what the State Water Project does is they give preliminary allocations usually at the end of the calendar year, so December timeframe, and they kind of modify that over the next couple of months as they start looking at the weather and the snowpack and things like that. So we currently have a estimated allocation for next year of 30%.
Okay.
So from two single digits, 5 year or 5% consecutive years to a 30. So I think that that's good news. Maybe not totally out of the drought, as I mentioned, but certainly good news from that perspective. That may not change Met's position and the state's position on water restrictions anytime soon, but a good indication that these weather events are helping out.
Thank you. And Sherry, I know that in the Public Works Committee that you mentioned something else about the 6,000 acre feet of water that potentially we cannot use because we have to replace it with recycled water. So can you share a little bit about that, too, and potentially, to me, that information you gave us is like having money in the bank and we can't get it out because the bank says we have to have so many millions of dollars in there.
Yeah, you're correct, Mayor. So we have, instead of paying full cash, the alternative to purchasing recycled water in the recycled water agreement is paying partial cash and otherwise giving us what's called a pump back allocation. So transferring to the city the private entities allocation to pump groundwater. And we have been storing those credits, approximately 6,000 credits since, I believe it's 2015 or 2014, since the recycled water project came to being, and since we were transferring that water over to ag facilities. The reason we cannot pump that water right now is because that account that you equated to a bank account, you're right about that, is restricted in use to the basin being a portion of the basin called the forebay having above a certain amount of water, and it's not there yet, and it hasn't been there in years. So we do have essentially a locked bank account, and we are working intently with GMA staff and hopefully coming before the GMA board this month. I hope it's this month, that we can go before the board and ask them to release that so that we can either pump it or sell some of that.
And potentially then, as we mentioned before, it's like having a bucket of water with a line. It says we got to be above that line, and we'll never meet it for years probably. And so we cannot cash in on those 6,000 acre feet of water.
Yeah, I think the projections are all over the place. I've heard projections that we'll get there soon. I've heard projections that we won't get there for years. I think the concern that staff has is that it is completely unreliable. It's our water, and those allocations were transferred instead of paying cash. So it is a payment to the city that has been deferred, essentially. And so we would like access to that ASAP.
4 years, and Councilman Turan.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank Ms. Klima again for the presentation. I can see right now there are 32 views for it. Again, 6 of them up here, probably some folks down here in the staff section. And I just want to thank you for the presentation, and unfortunately we can't do that live tonight. because of Measure M and it prohibits the public from seeing live presentations by the staff for something as important as this. Unfortunately, that's where we are. And so remember, for folks in the public, I apologize if there's little context to this conversation for you, but know that Measure M requires if you wish to see the presentation, you must find your own time to do it ahead of the meeting. So thank you again for it. I hope folks will get to see it even after the fact. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you for the update, and I guess if you listen to the odd stations like I do, you will know that Hetch Hetchy is about 98% of capacity, which is great if you live in San Francisco, but since we don't, it doesn't do us a whole lot of good, but hopefully the snowpack will catch up for the rest of us down in Southern California, so.
Councilor Perrella.
In the local newspaper, The Star, on February 1st, there was a legal notice put in, and it's entitled Notice of Commencement of Groundwater Basin Adjudication. And under this item on the agenda tonight, water policy and related litigation updates, can we get some information as to what we're looking at potentially? And the big thing is that I would like to share, Ms. Kleeman, our water department, and the staff in Public Works are doing a heck of a job protecting everything they can for the city of Oxnard. But Ms. Klima, with her background, I serve on some committees, specifically the Fox Canyon, and they're involved in a litigation in the Pleasant Valley area. I can't talk about it. But the issue is the amount of money that gets spent in these litigations in the years. And if Ms. Klima can give the information about X numbers of dollars and how many years, the last one that you're aware of, and just the basic ramification of what is this all about? A legal notice that I never used to read until Mayor Pro Tem Brian McDonald told me he always read the legal notices, and I started reading them, and I'll tell you, holy macro, the things you find in legal notices. But that's my point.
I'm just checking to make sure there's no divorce notice there for me.
You're getting divorced.
Can you, Mayor Pro Tem, can you repeat that into the microphone?
But, you know, I'm hoping we can get a little bit of some.
In 25 words or less. No, just kidding.
I don't know if the notice that you're referring to is from the Las Posas adjudication or the Oxnard Basin adjudication, but there are 2 groundwater basin adjudications currently happening. One is our basin, the one that we pump water out of. These water adjudications are multi-stage litigation. They take a decade, 15 years. I don't know how long they take. It really depends on how much the parties are fighting. In the Oxnard Basin, you know, there's hundreds of pumpers. And so reaching consensus and trying to settle that will be complicated at best, I would say. And so everybody's lawyered up. It's already well into the millions, and we're only a year or so in. This is going to be a very, very expensive fight.
I think you had mentioned the last one, I think you were aware of, was $2 billion, and that was just in legal fees?
I would imagine that's the bottom of the line.
Okay, because I will tell you, serving in this, when you find out that they bring the attorneys, everybody hires an attorney. City of Oxnard, everybody hires an attorney, but you get a prominent attorney, somebody who's good, and they inform you they just came in from another city because there was another issue on the 1978 lawsuit, which is still going on. And you're going, holy, how much is the legal fees in that? 1978, it started and is still not resolved. And that's what we're looking at in the future to protect the water for the residents of Oxnard. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, any last words? If not, let's receive and file.
Mayor Zaragoza, we
No
don't
speakers?
have. Yeah, we don't have any speakers virtually or in person for this item.
Thank you. Thank you. So we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Where are we going?
I'm going to my house. We're going to my house.